from Savannah, Georgia, just one of the many Americans that has lost a loved one due to the legislative branch's criminal negligence.
Because of Congress, my 23-year-old son died 2 years ago in Afghanistan. My nephew, he lost his leg in Iraq in 2006, and my brother died in Vietnam in 1969. Congress killed my family.
Defense attorneys for the now incarcerated 538-member group have dismissed the claims made by Westnick and other victims and released a statement saying their client has been, quote, a pillar of the national community for over 200 years and completely innocent of any and all wrongdoing. Keep checking theonion.com for more as this story develops.
This is the Onion News Network.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. To give us a call, to get on the radio, to take control of the airwaves, to let us know what's on your mind, give us a call, 603-283-6160. By the we, I mean myself, Chris,
Stu,
and Riley.
And we're just going to talk about the weather.
We are. We're going to talk about Hurricane Milton making landfall within... Okay, well, parts of the storm have already come. We've had a lot of tornado warnings. We've had floods happening from what I've been hearing. And it's just been crazy. Landfall will be happening shortly. So if you're in Florida and you can get through on the phones, tell us what you're experiencing.
Right. And if you're having a hurricane party, give us a call. I'd love to talk to a live hurricane party.
Right, 603-283-6160.
Because you know somebody's doing it. It's a Wednesday, but nobody's going to work tomorrow, right? So somebody is throwing a banger. It's going to be a big hurricane party.
Yeah,
somebody's going to do that. That may not be a good idea. I don't recommend it, but...
I bet they're all over the place.
But this is what happens. This is where you're supposed to feel pity on me. My wife was watching TV and President Biden's press conference came on regarding Hurricane Milton.
Really? I didn't know he was doing a press conference.
Well, he did. He had to get out and criticize Donald Trump for spreading misinformation and all this crazy talk and how... they were lying about the response in North Carolina. They're lying in regards to the response for Florida. And he said, remember, I've got your back. And then he mumbled and said some incoherent things. But one of the things that I caught on to was early on, he said, the White House, many people, I'm paraphrasing, I did not get this exactly right, but here's the gist of it. People at NOAA are saying that this is going to be the biggest storm to hit Florida in over 100 years. Have you heard that headline?
I've heard that headline, but at the same time, I don't buy it because, this weather phenomenon has been going on for a long time, and the reality is, you were telling us before the show started that there have been other hurricanes. Now, it may be true that this might be the strongest storm in the 21st century,
yeah,
in this century, but it's not the strongest storm in 100 years.
Yeah,
I heard somewhere they were calling it a 1,000-year storm.
1,000-year storm.
So
wow,
yeah. I know they like to throw out big numbers, though.
They do. They love to throw out the big numbers to terrify people.
And the thought of the strongest storm in the last 1,000 years is absolutely unprovable. So in hurricane studies, like we're talking about the 2000s now. It wasn't that long ago that it was, the 1900s. It was 1999 was in the 1900s, and even storms as big and as massive as the Labor Day storm, which hit Florida, considered one of the worst, if not the worst storm in history, the strongest hurricane to ever hit the mainland of the United States. That was in 1935, and they did not have satellites to check out the storm, see what the patterns looked like. They had no idea where it came from. It just came from the ocean. That's all they could really tell.
Well, certainly their scientific equipment and readouts are available.
Well, we can hypothesize. I mean, we can do stuff, and there is something about forensic weather forecasting or weather evaluation. They can look at what happened to topsoil and things like that, and going further back, they can look at things like fossils and determine when there were hurricanes and things like that. It's all a lot of conjecture. But for the president to come out and say this is absolutely the strongest storm that has hit the United States in the last 100 years is just absolutely false.
Oh, come on. I'm sure he's very up on his weather history.
He's got to be. He's the president.
Well, and he did just get done railing against all the misinformation that everybody is putting out except for his administration. I did come across this article by Roger Pilkey on weather attribution, this is just a synopsis. There's a link to the full one, but I'll hit the highlights. In the aftermath of many high-profile extreme weather events, we see headlines like the following from the BBC: Climate change made U.S. and Mexico heat wave 35 times more deadly. From the New York Times, study finds climate change doubling likelihood of recent European floods. And from Bloomberg, severe Amazon drought was made 30 times more likely by climate change.
Do they mean man-made climate change?
I assume that's the only thing that they ever talk about.
Well,
they don't talk about things like the solar cycle and how...
They don't talk about that. They don't talk about how the solar cycle is at its strongest right now, and they don't talk about how, the sun can affect weather too.
In major ways, yeah.
Did they ever determine that it's definitely global warming?
No, they haven't. The thing is so it'll talk about that in this article a little bit, but the IPCC, which is the International Panel on Climate Change, they're the ones that put out most of these dire warnings. It's a UN body, and they're the ones that say that, we have to do this, this, and this, or else we're all going to die. They say things like that. But they've often been asked to produce their evidence that rising temperatures on Earth have caused major weather events. Specifically, have they caused an increase in tornadic activity, which means tornadoes and hurricanes and typhoons and stuff like that, and they can't.
Yeah.
There is no evidence to that, and they've even acknowledged we have no evidence of this.
Mm-hmm.
But we're worried.
So the big news is that the weather changes?
The big news is that the weather changes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Goodness.
That's the big news. The weather always changes.
For those who closely follow climate science and assessments of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, such headlines can be difficult to make sense of because neither the IPCC nor the underlying scientific literature comes anywhere close to making such strong and certain claims of attribution. How then might we understand such high-profile claims? Read the full article here. We're not going to do that, but his takeaway message is that weather attribution from the outset was deliberately intended for political and media purposes. It was introduced because the IPCC was able to find any real evidence that weather was actually getting more extreme. I think that should be was not able to. He notes, first, event attribution research is a form of tactical science, research performed explicitly to serve legal and political ends. This is not my opinion. This is Roger talking, but has been openly stated on many occasions by the researchers who developed and perform event attribution research. They even call it that. Such research is not always subjected to peer review, and this is often by design as peer review takes much longer than the news cycle. Instead, event attribution studies are generally promoted via press release. So, a lot of what you hear from the experts are press releases that they want to attribute for, explicitly, legal or political ends. This should not shock anyone, but for some of you, it may shock them. First event attribution research is in the form of tactical science, research performed. For instance, researchers behind the World Weather Attribution Initiative explained that one of their key motives in conducting such studies is, quote, increase the immediacy of climate change, and immediacy is in quotes, therefore increasing support for mitigation, unquote. In other words, we want to talk about it so everybody cares about it.
So are they still doing studies, or are they just done away with the studies now and go straight to the media?
Well, this is a separate... I have no doubt that there is actual hard science, and I follow a few guys that do hard research into the weather, climate change, if you will. But there's this other branch that does tactical research to hopefully increase how much you care about climate change. And that is considered a scientific endeavor. I don't buy that.
Yeah, me neither.
I don't know if I buy it either, because they're just selling fear, essentially. They're selling this idea that we got to do something about the climate because it's a disaster. And the way they want us to solve it is, ask government for more money or whatever, and force people to cut down on their lifestyle.
The World Weather Attribution Initiative's chief scientist, Friedrich Otto, explains, quote, unlike every other branch of climate science, or science in general, event attribution was actually originally suggested with the courts in mind, unquote. Another oft-quoted scientist who performs rapid attribution analysis, Michael Weiner, summarized their importance, emphasis on the original, quote, the most important message from this and previous analysis is that dangerous climate change is here now, unquote. So this is from a guy who admittedly, he admits he works in attribution, not the science of weather, but in what you can possibly blame, what event you can blame on climate change. And that's it.
I can't imagine having a job I would hate more than that.
It seems like a good scheme.
That would be pretty bad, though.
It would be a good money-making scheme for sure.
Right, I think that's it. It has certainly been successful in its objective. I can personally confirm that the BBC routinely not only headlines attribution claims as if they were fact, they even use them to reject my complaints even when the actual data shows them to be false. To them, attribution claims and facts are interchangeable. That's Roger Pilkey. That's basically it. And the fact that there is literally a whole branch of climate science which is just dedicated, and these are actual scientists or allegedly actual scientists who put out press releases as opposed to research papers and things like that. We're going to go to the phones where we've got Dave Ridley on the phone. Dave, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, folks. Yeah, have you ever heard of Tony Heller, the climate skeptic?
Not him specifically. I do follow a couple other skeptics.
I saw him do a debate with one of the climate cultists, and he just wiped the floor with the guy. And I say that I'm a climate agnostic, right? I don't know, but yeah, just listen to Tony Heller sometime. Google him, and his most interesting claim, just off the top of my head, is that deaths due to weather, I think worldwide they're down by a factor of 50 over the last 100 years.
Interesting.
And that may be the United States, but that's his claim. One of the two, I'm not sure which. And that there's sometimes just statistics that say it all.
Yeah, and there are a number of guys out there that do work. The one guy I found real early was Bjorn Lomberg. Do you ever hear of him?
Yes.
He is a he's an environmentalist, but he calls himself the skeptical environmentalist, and he believes that mankind does have influence on weather through climate change. He acknowledges that. But he goes on to say, if we're serious about this, then why are we looking at these ridiculous plans to spend trillions of dollars when there are things that we could actually do that might make the world a little bit better? And it's not just trying to manipulate the weather and changing it to always be great. His big thing is you've got to mitigate risk because the world's a big place, and weather can do some crazy things. So why not look at examples like, the Low Countries in Europe, where they've done amazing things with not just dikes, but ways to compensate for rising sea levels in that area, which of course is diverse, questionable anyway. How much have sea levels really risen? I'm just all over the place, man. David?
Well, I was actually calling about something else.
Go ahead.
Two things. The New Hampshire Independence PAC apparently is losing its treasurer and is looking for another one and looking for volunteers in general. So I guess it's nhipac.org.
Okay. I did see Russell's post on that. I'm not the right guy for that.
I'm not either. I'm not a treasure guy.
Well, you may know somebody.
Maybe.
The treasurer is lost. Do we need to form a search party?
Can we do that? Nah.
Dave?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. But I do know the other piece of news is that I guess the nhexit.org podcast is back on the air. So with Free Talk Live, it's going to be really sad to lose you guys 2 days a week. But I guess looks like the NHExit podcast is back. So that's nhexit.org.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Of all the things that I've been witness to, I mean, the rise of strong secessionist movements in this state has been great. I mean, that's the one thing. If I had one wish, that would be it. We just leave.
Agreed.
Just get out of this mess.
Definitely New Hampshire independence is a very important thing. It's like you've got to break the yoke off of your back of the federal government and become more governable, more self-governing, rather than having the federal government govern us from Washington.
Absolutely. Anything else, right? Ridley?
Nothing to add.
Have a great day, man. Thanks for the call.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Sticking with the theme of the weather, again, I keep hearing these claims that hurricane, and this is another article from the Heartland organization, Heartland Institute, I'm sorry. It is Hurricane Milton is historic, but not unprecedented. It is wrong to blame human activity and climate change for the strength of a hurricane. Storms of similar size and strength hit the Tampa Bay area in 1848 and 1921 when human contributions to carbon dioxide in atmosphere was negligible. Even the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, says there is no climate signal in tropical storms. Hurricane Milton is on track Wednesday to be one of the biggest storms to hit the Tampa Bay area and is only one of a few Category 5 hurricanes on record in the satellite era, which is 1966 onwards. It may join Hurricane Michael in 2018 as the only major Category 5 hurricane to form in the Gulf of Mexico in October and make landfall at that strength. And I think it's down to a Category 4 or Category 3 by now.
It's Category 3.
Okay. As it's just approaching making landfall,
Yeah.
I believe, tonight.
Yeah, it should be within the next hour or so.
But, roll the clock back 8 hours and this killer of a Category 5. Not that there's that much difference. I mean,
Right.
a Category 3 can cause as many lost lives as a Category 5, depending on where it hits. While the history of Gulf hurricanes growing this strong and making a direct hit on Tampa Bay shows this is a rare occurrence, it is not unprecedented, and climate change driven by human emissions of carbon dioxide is not to blame. Climate and environmental experts at the Heartland Institute, James Taylor, Anthony Watts, H. Sterling Burnett, Linnea Lucan, and Steve Malloy. By the way, Anthony Watts has a great website. It's Watts Up With That, WATTS, whatsupwiththat.com. It is the leading, I don't know, I think he says the leading climate change website there is, because all he does is poke holes in what they say. But he has a tremendous viewership. They provide quotes below the following facts and perspective sections of this release to reach them for blah, blah, blah. Fact, Milton is not without precedent. Storms of similar size and strength struck the Tampa Bay area in 1848 and 1921. And the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has tracked at least 146 hurricanes that have formed in the Gulf since 1851. Let me double check. Yes, 1851. Historical data shows that there has been little to no long-term trend since 1900 in Florida major hurricane activity through Hurricane Helene, which hit the Panhandle last month. People born in the 1950s and later did not experience the record high hurricane activity of the 1940s, and the early 1900s activity was likely underreported, as virtually no one lived in Florida in 1900. The following plot shows the intensity of major hurricanes, 100 knot or greater maximum sustained wind speed, striking Florida since 1900. So in looking at this, I mean, there was definitely a busy period leading up to, and it kind of culminated with the 1935 Labor Day hurricane, which was one that killed a lot of people. Fact, no trend in hurricane intensification. Many may claim that the rapid intensification of Milton is unprecedented. This is also false. As the chart below shows, based on a study at the Journal of Geophysical Research Letters, there is no significant upward trend in rapid intensification in hurricanes that form in the North Atlantic and Gulf of Mexico in the last 33 years. Fact, no upward trend in hurricane activity. There is also no upward trend in global cyclonic activity since 1980. The way they would like you to believe is that these things are happening more and more often. They're not. They're not happening in America, not in the Gulf, not in the Atlantic, and not in the Pacific, which is a much larger ocean, and historically has some whoppers coming out of it. 603-283-6160 is our number. This is Free Talk Live.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp, is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. US President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have had what the White House is calling a direct and productive conversation. The phone call is the first time the leaders have spoken since Iran's missile attack on Israel last week. From FSN's Washington bureau, Kate Fisher reports.
Relations between Biden and Netanyahu have been strained over the Israeli leaders' handling of the war in Gaza and the conflict with Hezbollah. This is the first time they've spoken since August. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said the leaders discussed how Israel should respond to the attack from Iran.
It was productive, it was direct, it lasted about 30 minutes.
Israel's retaliation will be, quote, lethal, precise and surprising, according to its defense minister, Yoav Gallant.
Vice President Kamala Harris was also on that call with the Israeli leader. She and President Biden spent much of Wednesday focused on Hurricane Milton, expected to make landfall in Florida within hours. It is a monster storm with sustained winds of over 145 miles per hour, and it is expected to cut directly across the central part of Florida from the state's west coast to the east. Michael Brennan is the head of the National Hurricane Center.
A large area is at risk of seeing devastating wind impacts, widespread power outages, structural damage, and that could lead to a very unsafe environment after the storm.
These Tampa residents were evacuating as the storm closed in.
I'm scared. I'm worried that my house ain't going to be there when I get back. Because I'm right on the water. Storm surge is going to be pretty bad down there.
We're worried if there's something to come back to, because there still was all that debris on the streets from the people that emptied their houses from the last hurricane that weren't picked up. You can only pick up so much stuff.
And at the White House, President Biden has been pushing back over misinformation about his government's handling of both Hurricane Milton and last month's Hurricane Helene. That misinformation is being promulgated by some Republicans, including former President Donald Trump, on the presidential election campaign trail.
Assertions have been made that property is being confiscated. That's simply not true. They're saying people impacted by these storms will receive $750 in cash and no more. That's simply not true. It's undermining confidence in the incredible rescue and recovery work that has already been taken and will continue to be taken. It's harmful to those who need help the most.
In the UK, a shock development in the race to become the next leader of the opposition. Former Foreign Secretary James Cleverly has been knocked out of the race to become the Conservative Party leader to succeed former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. The race is now on between Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch after Mr. Cleverly and his campaign managers appear to have mangled their tactics in the latest round of voting. It means the next leader will come from the far right of the party. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. That's the number to call to talk about the weather. Well, we're talking about the weather, and we don't care what you talk about. You can bring up anything you like. We can change subjects faster than a hurricane can turn and hit Tampa Bay or whatever it's going to hit.
We joke, but, this is a serious weather day, I guess.
Well, is it?
I mean,
I don't know.
For a lot of people, it kind of is, because they're risking their lives, they're risking their homes, they're risking, everything they've known because of a storm.
I get that, but did you have to build in Florida? Did you have to move to Florida?
No.
Florida, which was basically unpopulated before 1900, and we were just talking about this during the break, about all the building and all the government money that flew down there to help things out, help government build up big businesses like the sugar industry. Stu was talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went in and just drained everything off south of Lake Okeechobee, killed thousands of species of birds, probably extincted them right off of the earth.
But hey, we made a lot of money off of sugar.
Somebody did.
Somebody did. I didn't either.
Did they use any cryptocurrency? Obviously not.
I doubt that. And right now, the reason we pay artificially high prices on sugar is because of that. government intervention to try to prop up a market that should not be taking place in the United States. I don't care if somebody wants to grow sugar in their backyard. If you have that capability, great. You can grow your own sugar cane. But the Pacific is really where it's the cheapest and has the cheapest labor costs. So why aren't we just importing our sugar? Because in a lot of instances where it's either banned outright or there's such tariffs on it to raise up the price of foreign sugar, so we have to buy U.S. sugar. And because sugar itself is so expensive, then we look at alternatives like corn and beets and things like that just to make it economically feasible to have a bakery. Now it's ridiculous.
And as far as I can tell, there was no further reason to drain all that land off besides sugar.
You certainly displaced a lot of Native Americans down there too. I mean, there were tribes and...
That's true.
Yeah.
Those guys were kind of rascally, weren't they?
They just ended up being marched off to Oklahoma and other places like that. It
was a huge tragedy in American history, having those people, having the natives displaced, all for the sake of, manifest destiny.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And they do this with a lot of different things. It's really it's a shame. It's a crime. This is why one of the many, 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 many reasons I don't like government. I don't like what they do, and I don't like what they have done in the past, and I have no belief that they will stop doing these horrible things. They give no indication of changing their minds. But I don't know. I mean, do we have an obligation to save everyone in Florida, to make them whole after these hurricanes hit?
Well, I'm not going to say that it's not a tragedy, because not everybody there decided to move there. Lots of people were born there.
Right.
And lots of those people are too poor to evacuate in any kind of a situation. It's just it's out of the question for them.
Yeah.
And that's a tragedy. I really feel bad for those people who are stuck there.
I agree.
That's a lot of wind and a lot of rain they're about to endure.
Yep.
But are you obligated to make them whole? No.
No.
Yeah, I think I feel a moral responsibility to help somebody out if I can.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. But you're not obligated to. You're not obligated to help your neighbor. You should, but you're not obligated to.
Right. And what we have now are government programs like FEMA that will sweep in and take care of everything and turn away volunteer support like they've done in North Carolina. And that was the thing that upset me the most, was reports of FEMA restricting airspace so private aircraft could not make it in to help. I knew a guy who was organizing helicopters to rescue people. This isn't just delivering aid. This is rescuing people in the face of all this flooding, getting them off of rooftops so they could be safe. And they were told that there was now a no-fly area over the entire place. There are a lot of rescue organizations that were turned away because FEMA said, no, we're going to coordinate this effort, and matter of fact, we're going to do all this stuff, which is just absolutely absurd. I think back to the Cajun Navy after Katrina? Do you remember that story at all?
Not about the Cajun Navy, no.
Yeah.
No.
The Cajun Navy was all these guys with boats, who fished and all this stuff around the bayous in Louisiana, and they saw this as an opportunity to help people out and to save people. Mm-hmm. And they were told, by all means, stand down. No, you can't go in there. FEMA's got this one. Don't worry about it. Don't save lives. We've got it. And that was a disaster.
Yeah.
And then we see everything that happened around Ashland and North Carolina. That was, again, and I don't look at Florida as being any different. The federal government is going to make the disaster relief operations worse because they refuse to accept any help. They refuse to just let people take part in helping their neighbors out, because no, we have these things. We have a federal government, and it's their job to do it, so nobody else can get involved. It might make us look bad. I mean, what's the point?
I guess so. I heard that that Florida is so good at taking these kinds of things that when somebody asks their governor, do you need any help? And he's just like, no. Hey, could we send some help over there up to North Carolina? Because they're not used to that kind of thing.
Right. And I know DeSantis refused or didn't take Kamala's phone call where she was calling to offer help. And he's just basically, again, I'm paraphrasing, it's like, we're busy.
Yeah,
I don't have time. I don't have time to talk to her.
Yeah, and if you're the president, how dare you go into a place like that and do a press conference, lock down all the airspace, shut down all these rescue operations. Anything that's going on is going to stop for the entire time you're there.
Yeah, it's asinine and insane, but it's not unexpected. They do this every time.
Yep, good old bureaucracy.
It's like in my life and in the places I've lived, I've only experienced one really bad weather disaster, and that involved snowmelt when I lived in Oregon. It was a early, like ridiculously hot February day that melted a whole bunch of snow, and my town got hit with floods.
Wow.
They were big, and it was nasty. Of course, we lived next door to a house that they had a whole lot of chickens, so everything that flowed into my room, which was in the basement, came through the chicken stuff.
Right through the chicken area.
So it was smelly, but the next day, the American Red Cross showed up, and they brought blankets and they brought all this stuff. Mm-hmm. It was I guess a quasi-governmental, non-governmental agency. I don't know how you describe the Red Cross.
I don't know.
But they were there, and they helped out, and they provided stuff, and they ended up bringing tankers of fresh water and stuff like that for a very small town. I mean, there were only a couple hundred people of us living there.
I'm sure they probably brought way too much.
They probably did. But we didn't need FEMA. We didn't need anything else, and thank God we didn't, because we were able to recover relatively quickly.
Yeah. If you did need FEMA, then
I'd still be there.
Southern Utah, where I used to live, experienced something similar in 2005, in January of 2005, where there's snow up in the mountains, and all of a sudden warm rain fell on the snow, and there were floods that wiped out some houses. So
I think I remember that.
Yeah. And these things happen, and for someone in Utah, that was probably a kind of a freak occurrence. Where I lived, It was certainly a freak occurrence.
Yeah.
It wasn't something we were going to plan for or to try to insure against, because it wouldn't have made financial sense to spend all that money on, for example, flood insurance in an area that got less than 10 inches of rain a year. But you do have those things that occur every so often. What we have in Florida is a complete bastardization of the concept of insurance, where the federal government provides federal flood insurance, and they'll insure everybody who is in areas that are known to flood. And it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, that sounds like a good way to just throw money away.
I know you've never even contemplated that the government could just throw money away, but they do it every frickin' day.
Really? They throw money away? Like, why would they throw money away? It has value.
You know what? If they threw money away to reduce the supply of money, there would be a net benefit, but they don't. They just print more.
Right.
But the idea of federal insurance for these places that just shouldn't even exist. I think about the Outer Banks in North Carolina. It's a gorgeous area. I love vacationing down there. It's beautiful, and you can, for not an unreasonable amount of money, you can rent like a 5,000 square foot palace, like right on the beach. And those things will get wiped out every 10 years.
Yeah, I bet.
And they will get rebuilt with federal flood insurance. and there's laws that say how high those premiums could ever be. In other words, if I were to build something like that, if we did not have this federal flood insurance backstopping it, it would never get built. You would never get a bank to loan you the money to build in such a hurricane-prone area.
Right. No one would ever take that risk on themselves.
No one
It's
would.
obvious.
And no insurance company would ever insure anything like that for any reasonable amount of money. But here comes the federal government, and it says, okay, how much beachfront do you want to develop in Florida?
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Just do it. Make sure you create some jobs when you're building them, because we'll take credit for that. And, if they get wiped out by the next hurricane that will certainly come along, we'll pay for it to get rebuilt. And then we'll take credit for those jobs too.
Yeah.
It's insane and ridiculous, and it just infuriates me that no one, I shouldn't say no one, because people do question the wisdom of this, but they need to question more. You need to question what is the possible economic sense of doing this.
And the problem is so many people's paycheck is dependent on them not questioning.
Yeah, and not just the bureaucrats, but there are a lot of complicit businesses.
That's right.
I hate to, and I can't really fault somebody who looks at, if you've got a small business and you can make a real good living off of doing government work, morally I have an issue with it, but I understand why you do it.
Yep. Nobody's perfect, right?
I kind of get that, but it's such a perversion of economics that there's no sense. I'm going to continue with more weather. Meet the 108-year-old 1916 major hurricane that brought 8 feet of flood water to Asheville, North Carolina, and covered the Biltmore. Have you ever been to that part of North Carolina?
No.
So I have. I've been through Asheville and kind of the whole path through Black Mountain and Shenandoah and all these places that now get some headlines. It's beautiful country. And one of the big things is you're not far from Asheville, but you see this huge, by huge, I mean 100,000+ square foot palace. And this is the Biltmore Hotel, or the Biltmore Home. I think they call it that now. But this was, I can't remember what family. Think Rockefellers or somebody like that.
It's not the Vanderbilt, is it?
It could be the Vanderbilts. Yeah, it could be. But the Biltmore it is just huge. And I think in the 50s, they ended up turning it into a museum just because nobody really could live in 100,000 square foot. Whoever owned it learned that just wasn't a fun place to live. With the climate alarmist hype about Hurricane Helene and yet more coming from Milton, it seems appropriate to introduce everyone to the year 1916 major hurricane number 4 that preceded the year 2024 Hurricane Helene visit to Asheville, with the headlines shown below and discussed in the What's Up With That article here. This is from the July 12th, 1916 edition of the News and Observer. 5 known dead in Asheville flood, with property damage estimated at $10 million. There's some inflation for you. Now, how many waterfront mansions would it take to add up to $10 million? 2? 8 feet of water at Union Station in Asheville, and all of the Biltmore covered by flood. That's what was interesting to me. All of the Biltmore. It's a 4-story high building.
It was covered, huh?
It was submerged.
Wow, that's a lot of water. The 1916 major hurricane Asheville culprit as number 4 on the list at the time when names were given to hurricanes. Names were not given to hurricanes, and there were no satellites, Hurricane Hunter aircraft, or long-range weather radar systems available to identify and track storms. There was 15 numbered Atlantic storms in 1916, even though there easily could have been as many more than that.
that were never observed during the season because observation inadequacies compared to today's available technology. The map below is extended to better explain the origins and paths of major hurricane number 4, which started about the middle of the map with a square at the number 4. So you see in 1916 a number of storms following the tracks out of the Atlantic, but you also see storms that were tracking out of the Gulf, and that was a thing then, and it's not that rare. Let's see, Colorado State University's comprehensive Northern Hemisphere tropical cyclone activity data identify the following pertinent information regarding the 1916 Atlantic hurricane year metrics using their extensive basin archives database information. And it goes on to tell, but the point being, this was not unheard of. This was not unprecedented. And these words keep getting tossed around as if you just say them enough, that will make it true. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, it will. They're just going to believe whatever they're told, whatever the headlines are on the news.
Could be absolutely ridiculous. If it's
Right.
on the news and they hear it more than 3 or 4 times, it's got to be true.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wonder, and that's why you have things like the climate change attribution, the article that we talked about before, where there is a recognized branch of climate science that attributes events to global warming sans any actual or factual evidence to back it up.
Well, I think it's done that way to instill fear to control the populace. I mean, these people talk about depopulating the planet. They talk about forcing net zero on everybody and things like that. So it's a matter of, creating fear and anger and all sorts of things so they can control the populace.
And that's a real problem because the antidote to fear is knowledge, and people have been programmed to not know specifically how to go and find their own knowledge.
Right. And anybody who dares talk about any of this stuff, you're going to be attacked. You're going to be attacked by government. You're going to get attacked by government agencies. You're going to get shut down. And in modern politics, it's just going to be labeled fake news. And you're going to be belittled by people on the news with no evidence otherwise. You're just going to be called a liar, a cheat. I'm not going to say it's... No, I think this one is. Is this the most horrendous presidential election you guys have ever been through?
Yeah, pretty much, because everyone says it's the most important election, and the candidates are terrible, and it's like, how can this be the most important election?
I don't know. Bonesman Kerry versus Bonesman Bush was pretty ugly, and
right.
Yeah, they're all
That was
pretty
pretty
messed
ugly,
up.
too. Yeah.
I don't
They
know.
are. I guess there's probably... Am I seeing an escalation in vitriol? Are they getting meaner?
They're getting dumber and meaner, yeah. Yep.
Dumber and meaner. That is a good way to sum up our political environment. I think you nailed it, Stu. I think that's exactly what it is. Welcome to America, where we've got dumber and meaner fighting for
Dumber and meaner.
control of your mind.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
They want to fight over the mind because the mind is a state of being, and if they can control your state of being, they can control you.
It's ridiculous, and I honestly, I can't wait for it to be over, but I realize that over is going to be a relative term.
Yeah.
Given that whoever loses is going to mount a legal battle, or maybe this is the one that just evolves into civil war. I can hope.
It's just like in SummerSlam, whoever loses the biggest is going to, they're going to hatch some diabolical plan after that.
Do you actually want a civil war, Chris?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I see it as an inevitability. I don't think there's any avoiding it. I would be really surprised if we make it another 10 years without the country coming apart at the seams violently.
That I kind of agree with, but I don't see it as, I don't know, it might look kind of like a civil war, but it would really just be authoritarians against, I don't know. It's hard to define. Like KGB rounding up people who were informers, or except that they weren't really. They had a certain quota they had to fill, so they'd round people up and off to the gulags with you, and that's the way it is. And so if you're not, if you're not the son of one of these people, or if you're not somehow connected, you're probably going to get fed to the machine. And It kind of ends up looking like a civil war. And if they say on the news that it is, then
it will be. Right. So you would see just a enslavement?
I think Americans are far too scared to pick up rifles and shoot them at each other.
I think we have a few people that would.
I'm sure there would be those few.
Yeah, some crazy, but
they're the extremists out there.
Yeah, I think you got way less than 1% that would take part in that kind of
shenanigans.
Yeah, yeah, shenanigans. This is a good thing to call it.
Yeah. I'm optimistic. I'm hoping it's more than 1%. I think it would be a couple, but I think it all depends on how far people are pushed down. If it gets to the point where families, where fathers can no longer feed the family, I don't care if it's mother, father, whatever, if you can no longer feed your kids and you've never had a problem feeding your kids before, I think that will be a turning point, and something much worse than what we're talking about now, with rampant inflation. I mean, we're probably not far from meeting that point for a lot of families. I know we have met that point for a lot of families.
Yeah, I just, and I can see things getting to that point, and I think to myself, what would I do? And it's certainly, I don't see any logical solution coming out of going to war with my neighbor. It just doesn't make any sense. I learn how to forage or trap.
Or trade with your neighbor.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not.
We go back to barter. We figure things out. But
and I think people would do that. I just think at some point they're going to look at. I mean, eventually we did figure out that King George was not a good guy. It did take a decade or so.
Sure. Yeah. And, America became independent as a result. So, there's always an idea for political revolution, and maybe secession is one of those political revolutions we should have.
Can we bring these two thoughts together, climate change and coming civil war? We might try. 603-283-6160 is our number. Give us a call. Change the subject. It's Free Talk Live.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 13th through the 16th for the 8th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which has sold out in recent years. Fork Fest happens the weekend before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 13th through the 16th. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there June 13th through the 16th. forkfest.party.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. US President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have had what the White House is calling a direct and productive conversation. The phone call is the first time the leaders have spoken since Iran's missile attack on Israel last week. From FSN's Washington bureau, Kate Fisher reports.
Relations between Biden and Netanyahu have been strained over the Israeli leaders' handling of the war in Gaza and the conflict with Hezbollah. This is the first time they've spoken since August. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said the leaders discussed how Israel should respond to the attack from Iran.
It was productive, it was direct, it lasted about 30 minutes.
Israel's retaliation will be, quote, lethal, precise and surprising, according to its defense minister, Yoav Gallant.
Vice President Kamala Harris was also on that call with the Israeli leader. She and President Biden spent much of Wednesday focused on Hurricane Milton, expected to make landfall in Florida within hours. It is a monster storm with sustained winds of over 145 miles per hour, and it is expected to cut directly across the central part of Florida from the state's west coast to the east. Michael Brennan is the head of the National Hurricane Center.
A large area is at risk of seeing devastating wind impacts, widespread power outages, structural damage, and that could lead to a very unsafe environment after the storm.
These Tampa residents were evacuating as the storm closed in.
I'm scared. I'm worried that my house ain't going to be there when I get back. Because I'm right on the water. Storm surge is going to be pretty bad down there.
We're worried if there's something to come back to, because there still was all that debris on the streets from the people that emptied their houses from the last hurricane that weren't picked up. You know, can only pick up so much stuff.
And at the White House, President Biden has been pushing back over misinformation about his government's handling of both Hurricane Milton and last month's Hurricane Helene. That misinformation is being promulgated by some Republicans, including former President Donald Trump, on the presidential election campaign trail.
Assertions have been made that property is being confiscated. That's simply not true. They're saying people impacted by these storms will receive $750 in cash and no more. That's simply not true. It's undermining confidence in the incredible rescue and recovery work that has already been taken and will continue to be taken. It's harmful to those who need help the most.
In the UK, a shock development in the race to become the next leader of the opposition. Former Foreign Secretary James Cleverly has been knocked out of the race to become the Conservative Party leader to succeed former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. The race is now on between Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch after Mr. Cleverly and his campaign managers appear to have mangled their tactics in the latest round of voting. It means the next leader will come from the far right of the party. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Over the next several days, we're going to bring you a unique eyewitness account of life in Gaza. It comes from vascular and transplant surgeon Dr. Nazim Mahmoud. He has just returned to the UK after spending a month working in the Nasser hospital in southern Gaza. His experiences there were searing.
What I saw there was unparalleled devastation, really. It was something that I'd never experienced, none of the team had ever experienced, and there were people who, for example, been to Ukraine 5 times since the war started there. So this was really at another level. When you go into Gaza, all you see is rubble in every direction for miles around. Nobody there, just a few armed looters. You drive through that for 30 minutes, and then you get to central Gaza, where the so-called humanitarian zone exists. You've got about 1.5 million people packed into that area now, most of them living in tents, makeshift tents, really, no water, no sanitation. What we found was that on a daily basis, those people were being bombed. Either the tents or the few remaining buildings were being bombed with large numbers of casualties. Usually twice a day we'd have a mass casualty event. 10 to 20 dead, 20 to 40 injured.
Tomorrow, the doctors experience treating the injured. The main news again. US President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have had what the White House is calling a direct and productive conversation about Israel's plans to take military reprisals against Iran. Florida is bracing for Hurricane Milton, expected to make landfall within hours, possibly the worst storm to hit the state for decades. And more than a dozen young states are filing lawsuits against TikTok because of its effect on teens and other young users. And that is the latest feature story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Hailing it as the industry's most innovative product to date, global cosmetics brand Maybelline released its long-awaited Ideal Woman Rubber Mask this week, a thick latex facial covering worn over the head in lieu of makeup.
By simply yanking it over your face, you can instantly achieve a fresh look that conforms to Western ideals of beauty. Essentially, you can just roll out of bed, stretch the latex urethane rubber beauty mask over your natural face, and boom, you're ready to start your day. Forget concealer, powder, blush, or mascara. Now you can achieve a look that adheres to the conventional standard of feminine perfection in seconds.
It's incredible. You immediately see the difference. The very first time I tried it on, my pores were minimized, my skin tone was more even, and all of the idiosyncratic little wrinkles, physical imperfections, and tiny irregularities that make my face unique were erased.
I don't spend a lot of time on makeup anyway, but now all I need to do is yank this thing over my head, and that's it. I'm conventionally attractive. I mean, this gives me so much more time to find an outfit that makes my body look thin and socially acceptable.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. Thank you for joining us for hour number 2 of our show tonight. We've been talking about the weather and bad government.
It is cold here in Uganda.
Right? It is cold. We could use a little global warming right now.
Yeah.
In studio, it's myself, Chris,
Stu,
and Riley.
And I wanted to tell you about this. Not your keys, not your Bitcoin is a lesson that too many people have learned the hard way. It's always best to get your crypto into a wallet that you control, but not all wallets are equal. Many of our hosts have been using Edge Wallet for years to manage crypto, and there just aren't many wallets to compare. Featuring a unique login system that makes it easier for you to access your crypto from multiple devices. Edge is designed to be user-friendly in a space that has become notoriously difficult for non-tech people. Edge is a valuable tool for novices and experts alike. You can learn more at edge.app, which features a link at the top for those who want to learn more about crypto and wallets. And thank you to Edge for sponsoring Free Talk Live. That's edge.app. One more time, edge.app. So we have been talking about the weather and climate change and actual scientists who say it is their job to attribute things to climate change, even though there is no evidence to support it. They release, instead of papers and peer-reviewed documents, they release press releases, which apparently is acceptable, at least to them, which I think is heinous. That is just not science. But hey, they still call themselves scientists, so I guess that's really all they need, right?
Yeah, just lab coat and clipboard, I think.
Just lab coat and some authority.
Pocket protector. You forgot the pocket protector. Stu, you got to have a pocket protector.
That's right.
Yeah, got to be official. Continuing along, this is from The Guardian. Several Florida jails and prisons refuse to evacuate ahead of Hurricane Milton.
Which is a tragedy, in my opinion.
Despite being in evacuation zones, correctional facilities will keep thousands of residents on site. This is by Gloria Oladipo, writing again for the Guardian. Several Florida jails and prisons are refusing to evacuate their residents ahead of Hurricane Milton, despite being in an evacuation zone of the storm. Manatee County Jail, which has 1,200 incarcerated people and is located in the southeast side of Tampa Bay, in the path of the hurricane that was roaring towards it across the Gulf of Mexico on Wednesday will not be evacuating, a representative of the jail told Newsweek on Tuesday.
Will the prison guards be evacuating?
That's a good question. The jail falls within the Zone A evacuation area, the outlets further reported. Those in Zone A could face a storm surge of up to 11 feet and are supposed to be evacuated first, according to the Manatee County Evacuation Guide. Quote, "We do not issue evacuation orders lightly," unquote, said the Manatee County Public Safety Director Jody Fisk. Newsweek reported Milton is anticipated to cause more storm surge than Hurricane Helene. So if you stay during Helene and you got lucky, I would not press my luck with this particular system, unquote. Hurricane Helene hit northwestern Florida near Tallahassee less than 2 weeks ago, and the impact in the state and in many states further north, especially North Carolina, remains massive. But a deputy with Manatee County's jail told Newsweek that the jail would reportedly be stocked with sandbags and other supplies, and in the event of flooding, residents would be moved to the top floor of the jail. The Guardian could not reach a representative of the jail for comment.
They're just going to cram them all in there up at the top floor?
Exactly, where they'll be really easy to rescue. I don't think rescuing prisoners seems to be high on Manatee County's list of things to do.
I wouldn't think so either, because prisoners are viewed as a terrible group of people. They're criminals, they're destructive, they're killers, or whatever. And at the end of the day, their lives are not as valuable as the people out of that prison.
Yeah, and I don't imagine the prison guards are real excited about the prospect of having to take 4 floors worth of prisoners and cram them onto one floor,
right,
and keep them all in line.
Yeah, I don't think so either, and I cannot imagine that there is a single jail where 100% are guilty of whatever they were charged with. And maybe that's...
I doubt it's over 70% in any of them.
Yeah. And every year we hear about more and more people being found innocent because of DNA and other new evidence that comes forward. So, you're putting people who may be innocent, you may be threatening their lives. Multiple jails and prisons in hurricane-hit states have previously failed to evacuate incarcerated people during a natural disaster, despite being located in a mandatory evacuation zone. In South Carolina, at least 2 prisons were not evacuated during Hurricane Florence in 2018. Quote, "In the past, it's been safer to leave them there," unquote. A spokesperson for South Carolina's Department of Corrections said, the BBC reported. During Hurricane Katrina in 2005, hundreds of incarcerated people were left in the Orleans Parish prison for 4 days during the deadly storm. Those incarcerated were left locked in their cells and rising floodwaters and without food or water. Other Florida jails and prisons have also said they will not be evacuating during Milton.
4 days without water in a cell?
Right.
How many of them died?
Right. They don't offer that here, but that would be worth researching.
They had water, but it wasn't clean water.
Right. They had more water than they knew what to do with.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they could die from drinking it. Other Florida jails and prisons have also said they will not evacuate during Milton. Correctional facilities in the counties of Sarasota, Hernando, Pasco, Charlotte, and Lee will also remain in place during the storm, according to 10 Tampa Bay, a local outlet. Family members of those incarcerated are worried about their loved ones' safety. Julie Reamer, a Florida resident, told 10 Tampa Bay that she had relatives in both the Charlotte Correctional Institution and the Hardy Correctional Institution. Reamer, who is being identified by her maiden name due to fears of retaliation, said she was told by officials in both jails that they would not be evacuating. Quote, "They said their buildings were able to sustain a storm like this," unquote, Reamer said to 10 Tampa Bay. Quote, they seem to think the storm is not serious. Reamer told 10 Tampa Bay, quote, when my son was sentenced, he was not given a death sentence. And that's a good point. Do prison guards and administrators have a responsibility to protect the safety of their charges? I would think so.
I would think so too. I mean, these people are under their care and their watch, and so why would they just mistreat them like this?
In their official capacity, I doubt they have a responsibility.
I'm sure there is some sort of implied immunity that they have, that, you know, you're not responsible if someone dies in your prison unless it's gross incompetence. And this, they'll say, well, you know, this was an act of God. I mean, we couldn't do anything about it. We couldn't stop it. And by the time it got really bad, you know, we couldn't do anything then.
Well, I'm sure if a riot starts up on any given officer's watch, he's not blamed for it.
Right. Even though it may have very well been because of guards or administration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a sad story because, like I said, somebody in there is innocent, number one. Number two, I don't think anybody in these county jails is there for a death sentence. I think that would be a Florida state penitentiary. So here you have people that are likely there for lesser crimes, probably some minor stuff, and given that it's Florida, and I don't think they have very liberal drug laws, there's probably a number of people there for nonviolent crime. I don't know. Do you guys know what Florida's drug laws are now? I can't imagine.
I think they're pretty egregious, if I've heard correctly.
Yeah. So you have people that are probably nonviolent being faced with the possibility of death because they didn't want to move them. That's that just reeks of laziness to me.
Yeah, definitely.
And why would you not want to do something? I mean, would you, like, if I were a prison guard, God forbid, and I had to come back in on Monday to go through bodies, why would I ever want to experience that? Why would I not be complaining that, you know, I don't want to have to clean this mess up? Let's be a little forward thinking and try to do something that's not going to lead to a disaster. Not to mention bad press and everything else. I mean, maybe people in Florida, including in the government, are just so jaded by hurricanes they don't think twice about these things?
Maybe, but my question is, where would we put those prisoners?
Well, I wouldn't put them anywhere. You just don't put humans in cages, if you ask me.
I'll go along with that.
But the reality is we have humans in cages. And
I don't have any humans in cages.
It's a good point.
I have some rabbits in cages.
Do you?
And I feel bad about it.
What did the rabbits do? What was their crime?
Nothing. I just like to eat them.
Oh, boy.
So a death sentence. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, kind of. Except for the ones that we breed.
Okay. So you got really, really lucky rabbits and really, really unlucky rabbits.
That's right.
Okay. Could go there either way. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know what, and I'm sure people that they've put in those cages are there for very good reasons. Like
sure.
they may have killed someone or they may have stolen large amounts of property and things like that. Is there nothing else we could do with them other than locking them in a jail cell? I'm asking anyone.
I don't have a solution for this, and I wish I did. But if you have a solution out there, 603-283-6160 is the phone number.
Stu's got an idea.
I just kind of think that the people who know the perpetrator best usually have a good idea of what to do with them.
That's a good point. Again, I'm going back to to a science fiction novel. I may have sent you guys a copy of it.
The Moon is a Harsh Mistress?
The Moon is a Harsh Mistress by Robert Heinlein. And in this, anybody convicted of a crime on Earth gets sent to the moon. It's a one-way trip. You're never going to come back. And the moon becomes a modern-day Australia. It's just one huge penal colony. And they just didn't have problems with crime once people got up there. If they were bad people and they did bad things, then the other prisoners just kind of took care of it, so they ceased to be a problem. Nobody could ever really travel back to Earth because they had quickly became acclimated to 1/6 gravity, so they could never really come back anyway. But the idea of what you're saying is, the people there just, for example, if someone murdered somebody, everybody knew who did it, and that person was taken care of. One thing that in this work of fiction he talks about is rape. Rape just never happened more than once. There was no such thing as a repeat rapist. If they did, they were dealt with harshly and immediately.
And I wouldn't exactly advocate for mob rule either, because that sounds pretty close to what that is. But by the people that know the perpetrator most, I think those are the people that will be somewhat compassionate in their dispensing of justice. And the person might get a smacking around whereas they don't lose the next 8 years of their life. And
right.
Yeah.
And they can still be somewhat productive, or others may benefit from their productivity. That was one of the points that the book made too, was that, they're either they've done something so bad that they just don't need to be breathing air anymore. And a couple people, and that was the thing, it was never a mob. It was usually just a few people who took care of these people, the ones that were directly affected. Mm-hmm. The brothers, the family, whoever it happened to be, took care of these issues. But over time, it just ceased to become an issue because everybody knew what the reaction would be by the other people on the moon.
That's right.
I thought it was pretty interesting.
And mob rule does sound like a horrifying idea, but at the same time, it might not be as bad as where things are going to be pretty soon. That might be better than your Gulag archipelago.
Oh, see, we're slipping back into this apocalypse talk live.
We are.
I love it. It's hard not to.
Well, there is a major hurricane bearing down on Florida. We've had Hurricane Helene in the past couple weeks or so. So, the world is coming to an end, Chris.
And we do have the most important election of our lifetimes looming in November.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's an immovable stone. I mean, it's going to hit us one way or another. Not that. So, has everybody here decided on whether or not they're going to vote?
I am definitely decided that I have a clean record and will not be messing that up.
I don't know if I'm voting or not yet.
Have you voted in the past?
I have voted in the past, just not in New Hampshire, and I haven't registered to vote in New Hampshire, and I don't have a New Hampshire ID yet, so.
Gotcha.
I'm still hanging out, trying to figure life out,
Yeah, I think. Let me think. I'll vote for the state offices that are up.
Yeah.
I do take part in that. I don't know whether I'm going to pull the trigger and vote for Trump. That's the only one out of the two I can imagine being coerced into voting for. And that's just because of Ross Ulbricht. I mean, if Trump is truly going to pardon or commute his sentence, then that could arguably be a vote for Ross.
Yep.
And my vote's not going to make a difference anyway. So I don't know why I have this fear that it's going to be somehow collusive to whatever else he does horrible.
I wouldn't worry too much about that. I just don't vote because I think it's kind of a waste of time.
It is a waste of time. Except at local levels. I'll disagree with you on that.
Even at a local level, because, if you if you got a candidate that's who obvious establishment, good old boys, he's not going anywhere. It doesn't matter how you vote. You can vote as hard as you want. It doesn't matter. They're not going anywhere.
You can press that chat as hard as you want.
They were rigged the vote so hard. They're not even ashamed of it anymore.
No, I mean, local for us, for me anyway, I live in a small town where I actually get to vote on whether certain funding occurs.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly enjoy going through every warrant article to vote on whether money should be appropriated for this or that. And I love writing no over and over and over and over and over and over.
I can see the gratification in that.
I think that's all it is. It's
it's a nice feeling to say no more money from the government.
Yes, no. I say no. And if there were anything like at the federal level, then maybe I'd be more interested in voting at the federal level. If I could just vote no, if I could just be like Ron Paul and just no, it's just no, over and over and over. But they don't want that level of detail.
You just tell them like this right now. No.
No, thank you. I don't want you to spend any money.
In fact, don't do anything.
Exactly. Actually, just stay home. Just stay home and just be absent. That person would have my vote.
Yeah, take up crochet or
take up a different hobby.
Really anything. Just
something that isn't controlling my life, please.
Right. That's all we ask. But unfortunately, we are living in a country, a system where people do control our lives.
Yeah, they certainly try to.
They do. I don't know how we... what we do is we live in New Hampshire. We keep fighting every chance we get of every stupid thing that comes out, and we keep pulling and trying to help New Hampshire secede from the Union. That's what our part is.
Yes, you just have to keep no in your heart.
Yes.
Exactly. Keep no in your heart.
And whenever I forget that, one of you two will quickly remind me, no. No is the correct answer. I was looking for Stu's story. Oh, yeah. This is from Newsweek. Quote, still no FEMA, still no military, volunteers blast Helena response on CNN. During a CNN interview on Sunday afternoon, volunteer pilots and relief organizers criticized the federal government's response to Hurricane Helene, saying, quote, there's no FEMA. There is still no military in North Carolina, which was ravaged by the storm late last month. Hurricane Helene made landfall on Florida's Big Bend region on September 26th as a Category 4 hurricane and then tore through the southeast region of the United States. It hit parts of western North Carolina particularly hard, washing away roads, destroying homes, and leaving millions without power. According to the Associated Press, 227 people have died across 6 states as a result of the storm, with the number expected to rise as relief efforts continue, making it the deadliest hurricane to hit the United States mainland since Hurricane Katrina in 2005. On Saturday, directors of 2 volunteer relief groups, Operation Airdrop and Operation Hilo, somberly described the realities on the ground to CNN reporter Omar Jimenez. We'll get into that in just a moment, but give us a call, 603-283-6160, if you want to change the subject or want to talk or weigh in on the weather. This is Free Talk Live.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. US President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu have had what the White House is calling a direct and productive conversation. The phone call is the first time the leaders have spoken since Iran's missile attack on Israel last week. From FSN's Washington bureau, Kate Fisher reports.
Relations between Biden and Netanyahu have been strained over the Israeli leaders' handling of the war in Gaza and the conflict with Hezbollah. This is the first time they've spoken since August. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said the leaders discussed how Israel should respond to the attack from Iran.
It was productive, it was direct, it lasted about 30 minutes.
Israel's retaliation will be, quote, lethal, precise and surprising, according to its defense minister, Yoav Gallant.
Vice President Kamala Harris was also on that call with the Israeli leader. She and President Biden spent much of Wednesday focused on Hurricane Milton, expected to make landfall in Florida within hours. It is a monster storm with sustained winds of over 145 miles per hour, and it is expected to cut directly across the central part of Florida from the state's west coast to the east. Michael Brennan is the head of the National Hurricane Center.
A large area is at risk of seeing devastating wind impacts, widespread power outages, structural damage, and that could lead to a very unsafe environment after the storm.
These Tampa residents were evacuating as the storm closed in.
I'm scared. I'm worried that my house ain't going to be there when I get back. Because I'm right on the water. Storm surge is going to be pretty bad down there.
We're worried if there's something to come back to because there still was all that debris on the streets from the people that emptied their houses from the last hurricane that weren't picked up. You can only pick up so much stuff.
And at the White House, President Biden has been pushing back over misinformation about his government's handling of both Hurricane Milton and last month's Hurricane Helene. That misinformation is being promulgated by some Republicans, including former President Donald Trump, on the presidential election campaign trail.
Assertions have been made that property is being confiscated. That's simply not true. They're saying people impacted by these storms will receive $750 in cash and no more. That's simply not true. It's undermining confidence in the incredible rescue and recovery work that has already been taken and will continue to be taken. And it's harmful to those who need help the most.
In the UK, a shock development in the race to become the next leader of the opposition. Former Foreign Secretary James Cleverly has been knocked out of the race to become the Conservative Party leader to succeed former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. The race is now on between Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch after Mr Cleverly and his campaign managers appear to have mangled their tactics in the latest round of voting. It means the next leader will come from the far right of the party. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. Our number, 603-283-6160. That is the number to call to take control of the airwaves, to change the subject. We've been talking weather. We were going to get into talking a little bit about Israel and what's going on over there. By we, I mean myself, Chris,
Stu,
and Riley.
And we've been kind of all over the place today, but we were just talking a little bit about Israel. So both you guys have a background with the Church of Latter-day Saints.
The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as they
That's
would
correct.
want to correct us if they were on the air.
Okay. Can I just say the Mormons?
Sure, absolutely. I think you should say the Mormons. It makes it a lot easier.
Okay, and you both lived in Utah.
Yes.
Right. I lived in Oregon, and I had friends that were Mormons too, so
Yep, they spread out pretty good.
Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit about Israel during the break, and your guys' take on Israel and Mormonism is unique, I think. At least one that I have never heard.
So as I understand it, Mormonism holds the idea that Israel is God's chosen people, but yet we are grafted into the house of Israel by virtue of being part of Christ's church. And they will do this by, various things and various rituals and whatever, and they'll say, yeah, you're part of the house of Israel now. Now you got to go gather scattered Israel and bring them to Jesus.
That's right. That sounds about right.
Okay. So how many Jews have you saved, Riley?
I have no idea.
Hundreds, probably thousands.
Well, I've done a lot of temple work, so.
Okay. Yeah.
And by temple work, so Mormonism has this idea that people can do proxy work for their dead ancestors in their temples.
Okay.
So
this is a popular thing for Mormon youth
Yeah.
to do on Halloween. Once they reach the age that they're a bit too old to go trick or treating, they gather in groups and go to the temple and do baptisms for the dead.
Yep.
Now I can never tell whether you guys are pulling my leg or being serious.
We're being serious.
This
So-
is a serious thing.
It's a serious ritual.
Okay.
Essentially what happens is, let's say, Chris, that you had a dead relative that lived in the 1700s or whatever, and
I probably do have
and
a
you
dead
had
relative.
You wanted to, save them and give them baptism because they didn't have an opportunity to get baptized in this life. So
Okay.
in the spirit world, which is the afterlife, they have that opportunity to receive the gospel essentially. And essentially, baptism is really important because Jesus did it and it's got to be done. So we've got to do their baptismal work for them and get them baptized. So you're going to go into the water on behalf of your dead relatives.
Okay.
Yeah, and anybody can go ahead and just submit names to the church of
Yeah.
people
Really?
they've discovered in their genealogy that they'd like to have baptized.
Hence the fascination with genealogy and the Mormon church. Okay. That's interesting. We're going to go to the phones where we've got random caller from Phoenix, Arizona. Caller, you're on Free Talk Live.
It's your boy.
Not my
Before I
boy.
hear another-
We don't claim to
I'm
own
talking
you.
to your listeners. I'm the boy of your listeners.
You're speaking for them.
before-
Okay.
Before I hear another endorsement for Ross Ulbricht's pardon, just realize one thing, right? He didn't appeal the ruling that he commissioned those 5 murders.
That's
And
because
they
they were
found
never
him.
charged with
They were never even brought in court. And what's the evidence, anyways, that he actually did this? I want to know because
Say
you
that
said
again?
there's hard evidence that he
He
actually
says
did
there's
this.
tremendous
I want to know.
evidence. It was
It
so
was
much
found out-
evidence it
Look-
wasn't even worth talking about.
Go ahead and present that right now.
The chat logs found on his laptop and also the Bitcoin wallets they found on his laptop with the payments made for those commissions.
Ross Ulbricht was
The
not the
judge-
only person that
and
had access to that account or the wallets.
That's yes. You
No, that
have
was proven in
evidence to
court.
that.
Because
that was not proven
because
in
the
court.
crooked
They just
FBI
they just
agents that
bring-
were pilfering the Bitcoin from the Silk Road actually did time over it. Not much, but a little bit.
No, all they did was steal Bitcoin. There was no evidence they ever.
How did they steal
planted
Bitcoin
a
if they didn't have
Bitcoin
access to the wallet?
On Ulbricht's laptop. What evidence shows that those guys who stole Bitcoin planted or faked evidence? There's none. and guess what? That wasn't even relevant to the 5 commissioned murders I'm talking about, idiot.
I'm pretty sure that
That
Curtis
was-
Green, one of the alleged victims,
That
says
wasn't one
that the
of the 5
FBI
murders
did
I was
set him up.
referencing, idiot. Do you understand that? That was the crime they were charging him in Maryland.
Hey.
They found him. They found that he commissioned the 5 murders I'm talking about in New York. Those are different. None of those were Curtis Green.
Hey, Skeeter, do you just automatically
Wait, I'm
call anyone who disagrees with you an idiot?
He does.
No, but he's wrong.
Because ad hominem.
Bringing up Curtis Green. Isn't he an idiot for bringing up Curtis Green when it's not relevant to the 5 commission murders I'm talking about? Isn't that
was a
being an
murder
idiot?
for hire allegation. I don't see how that's
Yes,
not related.
That was a murder. That was one of the 6.
And they
total
spilled out a
murders
can of
for hire.
SpaghettiOs on the
He
floor and
was
took a
charged,
picture of
bro.
it and said,
That
look,
was
we
the
did the
only one
job.
he was-
Come
that
on,
was
man. The
only
whole
one
thing's
he was
ridiculous.
actually-
Leave Ross alone.
So the Curtis Green one was the only one he was actually charged with a crime because that was a real person. But they did find, as a matter of fact, that he commissioned those other 5 murders that were imaginary, that weren't Curtis
Okay,
Green.
so why weren't they charged?
And they traced.
Where's the evidence?
They practically invented Bitcoin tracing or analyzing the wallet
chain
they found
analysis?
on his laptop. The chain. That's pretty much the advent of chain analysis. And so there
But it proves nothing because
there is no evidence. There is no reasonable evidence to show that anyone had changed
In your
any
opinion.
of those chat logs or planted those Bitcoin wallets on his laptop that contained the payments made for those commissions.
There was enough
The
evidence
judge
to...
even said in the ruling that the evidence toward those 5 commission murders was ample and unambiguous. And he did not challenge that in appeal. He went to 2 appeals.
What judge?
Both in district and Supreme Court. And guess what? There was no challenge to that ruling. He just challenged technicalities.
Because
So, yeah, you do that first.
The judge that sentenced him was not a man. That was
A
I
woman.
believe Catherine Forrester.
Yeah.
Did
Was
I
her
say
name?
it was a man?
You did.
It
You
doesn't
said
matter,
he.
right? I'm not even.
No, it
I'm
does
not even
matter.
sure which. I'm not even sure which judge made
I'm
the
sure
ruling
that you're
on the
not sure
finding.
about a lot of this stuff, so
You're-
maybe
you're
you should shut your mouth.
Sounding kind of
You're not sure because
flustered.
you don't even know what I'm referring to. I don't know who.
Yeah, I'd like
which
to, but
judge
you
made
seem
a
to have
ruling.
nothing to come up with, so...
I just told you all the evidence. You haven't come up with one piece of
Yeah, you
evidence.
told me all the evidence, which
that
is nothing. You
relevant
still
to
got
the
nothing
facts I
there.
just presented. Curtis Green isn't relevant. They didn't even use any of the evidence from those corrupted agents.
I'm sure because they were embarrassed by what they
from
did.
the task force, from the task. That was a different agency.
Hey,
that was a
Skeet.
different task force in Maryland. That wasn't the
Man,
FBI
I just
New
can't
York.
even get a word in.
So show me evidence where the Southern District of New York FBI changed chat logs or planted that Bitcoin wallet or someone else accessing that Bitcoin wallet on Ross Ulbricht's laptop. There is none. There is no reasonable doubt there.
Impressive.
But and anyway, I want to talk about something else now that I just destroyed you on Ross Ulbricht.
Okay.
destroyed.
Tell
You guys
us.
gotta
Tell
stop.
us your very
You got-
important thing.
Yeah.
Damn it. My finger slipped. And I'm sorry
I
about
hate when
that.
that
Steve.
happens. I was so looking forward to that.
I know.
that
You'll
call.
you'll call us back next Wednesday. There for a while during this show, I was like, can it be we're not going to get a ski call? Is this going to be?
No.
Man, I
No, he
felt-
likes to call in about Ross Ulbricht and thinks he knows everything about the case.
But he can't present anything substantial to talk about. Nothing I can look up.
And I'm really not interested. And if he was found guilty, he was found guilty. I don't put a lot of faith in the whole process, so that doesn't mean a lot. What I do know is that a guy who was doing something that the market demanded, which was coming up with a new way of buying safer drugs, that's a good thing in my book.
Yep.
And I applaud him for that effort. For that reason alone, I would support it. I mean, when people were buying, God forbid, I mean, there were heroin addicts buying heroin online from heroin dealers who would have very high ratings. People would write and say, this is good product. It's not tainted with anything. I've had good experiences with what this guy does. That's where money should flow in any economy, to the best provider at the best price. And why is that a crime? It's not like we won the war on drugs. I think Ross Ulbricht did more to cause people to live than any supposed murder for hires that he may or may not have done. Which and how many of those were? There was only one real person, correct?
As far as I don't even know what the other 5 are that he's talking about. I know about there was a murder for hire that the DPR account said, "Yes, go ahead and do it," and the people involved were FBI agents and a user on the Silk Road named Curtis Green, and he was coerced into going along with this, where they laid him on the floor and spilled out some SpaghettiOs on the floor next to his head and said, "Look, we blew his brains out." And
wow.
In order to satisfy the contract.
That's insane.
And rip off whoever placed the contract.
Right.
Because death by SpaghettiOs is not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it's probably highly processed food and probably not good for you, it's
right.
Probably does not satisfy what most people think of them as a murder, just because you spilled some SpaghettiOs.
That's right. As far as I can tell, Ross is a good person who got put into prison for being a good person.
Yeah.
For doing good person things.
603-283-6160 if you want to help redeem all callers by following up Skeet. We're going to go to Israel. This is from the BBC. Biden tells Netanyahu to minimize harm to civilians in Lebanon. See, that's leadership.
Oh, yeah. So much leadership.
When you say things like minimize harm.
Minimize harm to civilians.
Hurt them a little bit.
Hurt them as much as you want,
but not real
harm.
hard. Don't hurt them too.
Don't hurt them as hard as you think you want to hurt them. It's leadership right there.
Summary: President Joe Biden tells Israel to minimize harm to civilians in Lebanon in a call with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the White House says, if you believe them. Biden urges the Israeli PM to take particular care in, quote, the densely populated areas of Beirut, unquote, and a frequent target for Israeli airstrikes in recent days. The pair spoke for the first time in weeks. Vice President Kamala Harris also joined the call. See, Kamala is actively engaged in this conversation. She was on the other line.
Right. So active.
I cannot imagine a phone call with Joe Biden, Benjamin Netanyahu, and Kamala cackling in the background. I just can't envision that at all.
I would love to hear that phone call because it'd be really interesting to hear Biden say, don't minimize harm as much as possible.
Sounds like something that that would be a really good spoof skit. Saturday Night Lifestyle.
I told you guys about my misfortune of having to listen to Biden's press conference today. And this is a press conference where he was reading off of a teleprompter. I cannot imagine being in Joe Biden's mind while he's trying to carry on a conversation with another head of state while you have the cackling hyena in the background. I don't know what she would be doing. Would she just be laughing?
I don't think she would be laughing, honestly. I think she'd be, Joe, we're here for you. I'm here to support you. Mr. Netanyahu, we just want to make sure you don't harm people as badly in Lebanon. We don't want to, hurt our allyship with you. We just minimize this much harm,
Fighting is continuing between Hezbollah and Israel, with 4 people killed in an Israeli airstrike on a Lebanese village, those pesky villages, and 2 killed by Hezbollah rockets in northern Israel, local authorities say. On the ground, clashes are also reported along the border after Israel expanded its invasion into western areas after earlier focusing on the east. So how many fronts is Israel happy with opening up? So you have the front, which is the Israeli fighting
border
with the Palestinians, the Gaza fighting.
Yeah.
Now they're skipping all that and they're attacking Lebanon.
Now they're doing Iran.
And now they're talking about increasing their war against directly with Iran. And does this make any sense other than we just want to do whatever we need to do to drag the U.S. into this conflict? I can't see it.
I can't understand this whole thing that we got to drag everybody into war.
To me, I'm reminded of that group of jerks back in school that would hang out. And it was always like the little guy in the group that would cause problems.
Right.
And then he'd go and, then if you did anything back to him, you'd have the big guys to deal with.
You picked on the little guy. Yeah.
But he was always the jerk. He was always the one, starting everything.
And you think Israel is the jerk in this situation?
No. I'm just reminded of a story.
I just don't get this, and it's not because I'm not anti-Semitic. Before someone calls and accuses me of that, I have a lot of Jewish friends, and I like them, and I certainly don't look at Jewish people and go, "Ooh, there's a Jew." I've never been that guy. I've never been one who looked at that.
I don't think any of us have.
No, I can't even imagine what that would be like.
What I do hate is nationalism. I hate government. And if you combine government and nationalism, you kind of end up with Zionism, which I have a real problem with.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that...
Well, the Mormons are Zionists.
They are.
Okay, explain.
Very much so. So,
I'm learning lots about Mormonism.
Mormonism holds the idea that, God's chosen people, Israel, is going to gather back to their holy lands at some point. So we need to go save their holy land and support Israel. At the same time, they also believe that America is a promised land in the sense that, God chose this land for another gathering to take place for his people on this continent, in this part of the world, to gather in Jackson County, Missouri. So that's the interesting thing about Mormonism.
Kind of like their book is another New Testament of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, the Book of Mormon is another testament.
We have another Zion.
Yeah.
A newer New Testament.
Yep.
Yeah. But Joe Smith really had some big plans for this. I forgot what he called his nation that never quite formulated. But he said he was going to be like a Muhammad to the world. He was going to try to take over the whole planet.
Okay.
He was dead serious, man. He was very Zionistic. And this was around the time that I think some European settlements started popping up in Palestine.
Interesting.
Yep.
So that was like shortly after the turn of the 19th century.
Yeah, the church, the LDS Church was organized in 1830. So, you know.
Yep. So during the 20s, when he was getting all his big plans.
Yep.
Got you. That's interesting. I don't think that being a particular religion entitles you to certain plots of land on this earth. I've always kind of disagreed with the whole concept of Israel. The idea that you could say this land was stolen from us when it was stolen from some people you may be related to 1,000, 2,000 years prior, that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me.
It doesn't make sense to me either. It's really strange.
No, I can't.
And this holy war has been going on for thousands of years. I mean, the Crusades were fought over the Holy Land too.
I understand that. But then to pop up in the 20th century and the late 19th century, early 20th century and say, no, even though I've never left Russia or I've never left Germany, I have all the rights to the Holy Land as my forefathers thousands of years ago because it's mine and they took it from us.
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around that.
And Judaism and Mormonism are not the two exclusive groups that hold this idea kind of in their minds.
Okay.
Islam's got some sacred sites that I'm sure they'd never be willing to give up because they've been promised to them by their God or what have you.
Or, yeah. No, that's not true. I was going to say they do control, all these sites in Saudi Arabia. I mean, those have always, as far as I know, been under Mormon control. But then I remember, they do have that temple in Jerusalem.
You mean Islam control, not Mormon control?
Yes.
Yes. Or Muslim control?
Well, maybe the Mormons do control Saudi Arabia.
You know, maybe.
Maybe. It's hard to tell.
I think they got some very sneaky tentacles.
Do you? I can't. I know so little about Mormonism.
Well, they like to keep quiet about the real juicy stuff anyway.
Yeah, they like to keep quiet about a lot of things like their temple ceremonies.
Yeah, which are very Masonic.
Are they?
They definitely have Masonic origins for sure.
Yeah. Him and a guy named Bennett came up with a lot of the Masonic stuff.
Okay.
And he was definitely into the lodges.
Interesting.
Well, the story I heard about that was that King Solomon was imparting secret knowledge into the Stonemason Guild and who were building the temple in ancient Jerusalem, and the Freemasons carried that knowledge for centuries and centuries. So Joseph Smith was like, well, here's the sacred knowledge that I found, and I'm going to pass it on to my people in a different form and hijack the Mason rituals and say this is a way to get back to God. And who knows if it's a way to get back to God. It's an interesting ceremony, having done it a few times myself.
And if you want to know what the secret is to these secret societies, whether it be Freemasonry
Are you going to spill something?
I'm going to spill all the beans right now. Here's the secret.
All the coffee
There
beans.
is no secret. They're just leading you on, man.
Yeah.
Come on, man. That was such a letdown.
That's it. You will never attain your own planet like the Mormons are going to promise you. I don't know what the Freemasons promise you, but you're not going to get it.
Well, I think Freemasons and affiliated groups can promise you power, and depending on your family, they can deliver that.
They probably could.
Right.
At least on this earth, anyway.
I mean, if you're a member of a particular family, then you can probably get a lot.
Yeah, being a member of the Mormon Church can deliver a lot of things too, but
I'm sure
but it's not what they tell you it is.
Right. I'm sure there are certain families within the Mormon Church that are much more powerful than other families.
Yeah, I'm sure there are a few.
Yeah. That's interesting. I should read up a bit on that. I just finished a book by Jim Marrs on the Illuminati, which was almost too big a subject to fit in a book. I mean, this is like wrapping up like Mason folklore and every possible secret society that all had their origins in the Illuminati, which was a real thing.
Yeah.
They published papers and they had their secret rituals and things like that, and they branched out in different areas. But I think people envision the Illuminati as this thing that's been going on for thousands of years, and it really wasn't that. It really was something that just came about and kind of quickly faded away. But the people that were into it ended up going into Masonry or were already parts of Masonry.
So that's kind of how the secret societies work, is that if you're in one, then yeah, that's one thing. But if you're in the club that nobody really talks about, then you're going to be a member of several of these societies.
I don't doubt that. Man, why did I never get in a secret society? Maybe it's libertarianism.
Maybe.
Libertarianism and bones. 603-283-6160 is our number. Give us a call and tell us what you want to talk about. This is Free Talk Live.
Everything you're already doing still isn't enough? I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. When you're shopping bricks and mortar, ask for an open box. I saved a couple $100 on the computer I'm writing this on. Still brand new and under warranty. Shopping online? Before you check out that cart, open a separate browser and Google promo codes for the company you're shopping. And if you're a member, try AAA or AARP. Shopping for services? On vacation, I flossed off a crown, and the nearest dentist wanted $75 to re-cement it. When I asked, discount for cash? The doc pocketed the crisp $50 I offered. Threatened to quit. Many subscription services and publications will counteroffer. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Officials in the U.S. state of Florida say the time to evacuate has passed as Hurricane Milton begins to make landfall on the state's western coast. The storm has already produced tornadoes across the state that have knocked down power lines and overturned vehicles. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is urging people to shelter in place if they're in the storm's path.
So the storm is here. It's time for everybody to hunker down. I know we've got massive amounts of resources that have been prepared for this storm.
Milton was downgraded to a Category 3 hurricane from a Category 5 storm as it approached land, but it is still considered an extremely dangerous hurricane with wind speeds over 100 miles per hour. More than 300,000 people in Florida are without power, a number that is expected to rise significantly as Milton makes landfall in the area south of the city of Tampa. Earlier in the day, President Biden said the hurricane could be the worst to hit Florida in a century.
Milton still carries incredible destructiveness, can wipe out communities, can cause loss of life. Storm surge is still expected to be up to 13 feet.
Milton's arrival comes just 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene made landfall in Florida, a storm which would ultimately kill more than 200 people. National Hurricane Center Director Michael Brennan shared tips for those who will be impacted by the storm.
So we want to talk about widespread power outages. How do you keep yourself safe? You want to use flashlights and not candles. You want to practice portable generator safety. We lose a lot of people to carbon monoxide poisoning from improper generator use. And you want to be careful with any food and water left in your home without refrigeration. Again, make sure that it's safe to eat.
In other news, more than a dozen U.S. states are filing lawsuits against TikTok because of its effects on teens and other young users. A bipartisan coalition of attorneys general allege the social media giant is addictive and harmful to users' mental health. TikTok says the claims are inaccurate and misleading. FSN's Sally Patterson has more.
Around 6 in 10 US adults under 30 say they use TikTok. The social media app's got more than 150 million users across the country. That's almost half of America's population. But officials in more than 10 US states say it's doing far more harm than good. In fact, one lawsuit accuses TikTok of being, quote, digital nicotine, and says the app is intentionally trying to addict young children to its platform. A TikTok spokesperson denies that allegation, saying the company provides robust safeguards and has voluntarily launched safety features to protect young users. The lawsuits come as TikTok faces increasing scrutiny about its Chinese ownership, with US President Joe Biden saying he'll ban it unless the company's sold by next April.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Over the next several days, we're going to bring you a unique eyewitness account of life in Gaza. It comes from vascular and transplant surgeon Dr. Nazim Mahmoud. He has just returned to the UK after spending a month working in the Nasser hospital in southern Gaza. His experiences there were searing.
What I saw there was unparalleled devastation, really. It was something that I'd never experienced, none of the team had ever experienced, and there were people who, for example, been to Ukraine 5 times since the war started there. So this was really at another level. When you go into Gaza, all you see is rubble in every direction for miles around. Nobody there, just a few armed looters. You drive through that for 30 minutes, and then you get to central Gaza, where the so-called humanitarian zone exists. You've got about 1.5 million people packed into that area now, most of them living in tents, makeshift tents, really, no water, no sanitation. And what we found was that on a daily basis, those people were being bombed. Either the tents or the few remaining buildings were being bombed with large numbers of casualties. Usually twice a day we'd have a mass casualty event, 10 to 20 dead, 20 to 40 injured.
Tomorrow, the doctors experience treating the injured. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
The main news again. Officials in Florida say the time to evacuate has passed as Hurricane Milton makes landfall on the state's western coast. More than 300,000 people are without power, a number that is expected to rise significantly as the storm hits. And more than a dozen U.S. states file lawsuits against TikTok because of its effects on teens and other young users. That is the latest feature story news.
This week, researchers released a comprehensive 5-year study linking heavy drinking during pregnancy with attending a concert by Detroit-based rap rocker Kid Rock. The study found that women who had consumed alcohol while pregnant were much more likely to be wearing leather halter tops and making devil horn hand gestures during encores of All Summer Long and Ba with the Ba than those who did not.
Drinking 3 or more alcoholic beverages in less than an hour was highly correlated with going backstage at a Kid Rock show and then getting into a fistfight with another woman in the parking lot.
The world's supercomputers released a study this week confirming that they lack sufficient power, presenting a thorough case for significant leaps in speed and memory. Overwhelming evidence found that these complex machines should have total control over the critical systems they manage, including integration into the planet's energy grid, freshwater supply chain, and telecommunications systems. The study's 500 co-authors further concluded that all permutations have been simulated and that this is the optimal course of action.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. 603-283-6160 is the number to call to tell us what's on your mind. Telling us means telling myself, Chris, and Stu, and Riley.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. You were looking at the screens. You were doing God's work. You were helping make sure the show was going on, and I hope it is. But I wanted to tell you a bit about Dash. Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is cryptocurrency made for spending. You can pay your bills with Dash at spritz.finance, plus they can send dollars to your bank if you still need those for something. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. We really do appreciate it. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. And we're going to go to the phones where we've got Sarah in New Mexico. Hi, Sarah. You're on Free Talk Live.
Yes, there were 4 felons that were denied their voter registration. And so they actually sued and went before a judge. And the judge ruled that, you know, they have their, that's the new amendment that we have. And it turns out our Governor Grisham, she signed it into the law. And the bill reads that the day that they come out of jail, they could register to vote.
Okay.
You know, that's the, and so all of this mishap was just that, is that like the Secretary of State, she didn't, it's not programmed into the computer or something?
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. It's like maybe her department didn't update the new code. I mean, the new law that now
didn't hit enter.
People. I don't know what the problem was because the law was passed, but it did not register with the registration department. So 4 of them got rejected. And you know what? It makes it bad for me. I'm telling you, because I've been running around telling everybody that felons could vote. And then I was telling them the same thing. The day that they come out of jail, if they were outside of jail, they could register.
Okay.
So you know what? If they rejected 4 of them, if they were giving them problems, they would have gotten mad at me. So, you know what I mean? So, but actually, it made the news. So 4 of them decided to sue, and you know, so.
And so, are these 4 now registered to vote?
Oh, I think so. And then 11,000 more people are eligible to vote. But see, they passed this many years ago. So what does that tell you? That the felons didn't bother to register to vote because the new bill, I think before, but the thing was that before it was the felons could vote after they finish their probation, and that probation might be like a year. The new bill that she signed is that they can register to vote as soon as they come out of jail. So, you know, it's not, that's probably why it's not updated. Something's not like in sync with the program. So
what it tells me is that it takes years to find out the government inefficiencies
I was just
actually happen.
Yeah, the government inefficiency, right? Because they're not communicating, you know, because the governor signs a bill, and then the Secretary of State still they're still going on the old bill.
You know how we solve this? We better get a whole bunch of people to register to vote, and then vote in more government.
Exactly.
And that's what you're trying to do, right? Get more people registered to vote to get bigger government.
Well, I don't know because you know what? I had fun today because I went to a bicycle guy and I told him that you could use your ID to vote and register. And he said, I'm a felon. Well, the new law is the felons can vote. So I had fun today talking to one felon, and it was too late to register on paper and line. I said, you have a photo ID. I said, they'll take photo ID and sign an affidavit, sign a paper that you say you live in Bernalillo County, and then you're good.
Right.
So, you know, and I'm excited that first place, the annex, 300 people showed up to vote yesterday. It was like a big grand opening. So I'm hoping that I could do maybe a camp out. You know what I mean? That'll be like spectacular.
Will it?
I want to be on the news. You know what I mean?
You want to be on the news, Sarah?
Why do you want to be on the news?
Well, you know, that's how you get people excited about voting. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get the vote out people. So I have a party, I have a picnic and some music. And
why do you want people excited about voting, Sarah?
You want them to vote the way you want them to vote, right?
Well, it doesn't matter. You know, the way that people vote in Bernalillo County is they're all Democrats, but they're kind of dumb. See what I mean? Unless you, that's the problem.
A lot of Republicans would agree with that.
Well, yeah. So the problem here is that they don't know how to vote. I mean, look at all these felons, 11,000 of them, asking me if felons could vote. I'm just like, how do I know? It turns out they could register the day that they come out of jail, and look at these 4 people. They tried, and then they found out they were rejected. You know what I'm talking about? So, how does that tell you? That
they're being disenfranchised.
That in 11,000 felons, that not one of them could ask Google the question, can felons vote?
You know, that pretty much tells me that they're Democrats and they're kind of stupid, you know?
I love it. Oh, my.
Well, yeah. So, yeah, well,
so is that an attribute of Democrats in your opinion then? Is that they're kind of stupid?
Well, and they're kind of also lazy.
Lazy and stupid. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, for every one Republican, there's 9 of us, so I don't really have to do anything. I think that's the mentality, and that's about the truth of the matter.
You think it's okay to be lazy and stupid, Sarah?
You know what? I don't know about okay, but that's why I'm running around trying to teach people that they could vote. And this felon thing is really unfair. When you're young and dumb, you do a lot of stupid things.
I know
you know
all
what
about
I mean?
this.
When you had
we've all been there.
When you get older, you want to be able to vote. And then that right has been taken. I mean, it's heartbreaking, to know that it doesn't matter if you're 45 or 50, you want to vote again.
I got older and I just decided I don't really want to.
No.
Most elections I don't. But go ahead.
What if they told you could never vote for the rest of your life? Your right has been taken away from you.
They
and then, you know what? You would
told
want
me
to
that
vote.
at some point, and I was apathetic about it. And now, if I could vote, I'm very staunchly against doing so.
Right. So Stu has just decided he doesn't ever want to vote.
I don't personally care about voting. I mean, sometimes it feels good to vote, but at the same time, it's like, I don't feel like I really want to participate in the system anymore.
Well,
I
see, this is hard for you, but Riley, they give you a little flag sticker.
Oh, yeah, that thing's gorgeous.
And, I mean, it would just set off that sweater.
That is the one thing
saying.
that burns every time.
Does it? You just look at that and you go, man.
The stickers, man.
So jealous.
I want to talk about that sticker. You know what? We got 12 different designs now, thanks to the school children. I mean, serious, from New Mexico. I mean, they had these little school children make designs, pictures and everything. Now you got 12 choices. When you vote in person, you could pick out which sticker you want.
Ooh.
So that is really indoctrinating young.
Maybe if they give me a lollipop too, then maybe I'll register.
Yeah, maybe.
Do they give?
Well, they put the poor kids to work for the artwork.
That's great. Child labor law, child labor abuse.
Yeah, pretty much.
Making
we get to exploit
stickers.
their artwork.
Oh, wow.
I know,
I'm
but
sure the
that's
kids
exciting.
are very proud if theirs gets selected. That's probably something they enjoy.
Well, you know what's funny? I was walking by some pizza Domino's, and a kid saw me with a sign, and he was all happy and excited because now I figured out they put those kids to do their artwork for the little stickers. No wonder he was all excited.
Right. Hey,
yeah,
Sarah.
he probably knows about it.
Sarah, thank you so much for the call. We're going to David, also in New Mexico. David, you're on Free Talk Live.
Well, if you don't vote, then for sure the powers that be get what they want. And if you do vote, the powers that be may get what they want. And in either case, you don't want what the powers that be want. So of the two options, to vote or not vote, the only one that gives you any chance of influence would be voting, right?
Nah, I just...
Depends on where you're voting.
In most cases, other than like very local elections, I just don't care. That's the other thing. I can show up at the polls every year.
You're being a politician. You're doing what the politicians do. I asked you a question.
The politicians do... Here's my answer. The politicians do what they want anyways.
Now you're doing another thing. Now you're doing another thing that the politicians do. They talk over you.
Oh, okay.
So let's go back to the beginning.
Okay.
Let's try it all over
We
again.
will. I won't talk over you this time.
Good job, Chris.
I won't
promise.
I won't waste your time representing the whole scenario. We'll just assume that everybody's not a Democrat and they're not in Bernalillo County and they're intelligent enough to remember what I said.
I got 2 out of 3.
Yeah. And so the proposition that I put forward for debate, which you're welcome to debate it, but please debate the proposition. Don't be a politician and do the two things that the two different people there did, Chris and Stu. And Riley threw something in there too, and I don't know. I couldn't even hear what Riley said because it was quickly interjected.
We were talking over you.
He may be politicianing as well. I don't know. Okay, so once again, when I say over, then I will have shut up, and you have the floor to debate me, and I'm good at keeping my mouth shut until somebody else tells me it's my turn to talk again.
Okay.
So the question is that if you vote or you don't vote, if you don't vote, you're not having any influence whatsoever. And that's not what we're debating. We're not debating whether you have any influence by not voting. That could be debated, but that's not what's on the table. What's on the table is if you do vote, that is the only one of the two, voting or not voting, where you have a chance of directly influencing. You're not guaranteed, but you have a chance. And so now I'm going to shut up by saying the word over, and then you can tell me when it's my turn to talk again, if it ever is. Over.
I think I have a pretty good counter for that, David. So
a pretty good what?
A counter.
Okay.
Counter for that, yes. If you don't vote, then they just don't know how you feel about it. If you do vote, they got some feedback to find out how hard they can push toward what they want to do and what they're going to do anyways. That you're not going to stop them by voting. They're not going to say, oh no, they don't want me to do this thing, I better not. They do what they want every time anyways.
David, go ahead.
No, well, I'm waiting because I'm good at keeping my word. Okay, so you give me permission. Okay, so yes, I can see your point there, Stu. But I think if I weigh the value, the power of what is gained by doing what you suggest or propose, is not greater than the potential power of actually voting. In short, that's my response. I may have more, but let me just shut up. Over.
Okay.
I can see where David is coming from. I think that, if you want to vote, no one should stop you. Like, if you believe you have a chance to influence somebody or the national conversation or the local conversation or the state conversation in such a way that you can feel like you're making a difference, then by all means, let's vote. But at the same time, sometimes your vote isn't going to matter on certain electoral stages like the national election.
Maybe I wasn't clear on my point there. If you go out and vote for Ron Paul or somebody who's going to lessen the damage the government does to the individual's life, then he's still not going to get any additional power. He's never going to be president. They're just not going to allow that. So whatever potential good you say comes out of voting, I'd like to know what that is. And the potential good that comes out of not voting is whatever you do with your time while you're not voting, which could be tremendously good.
Might save cancer.
Might
save cancer while I was not voting.
That's right.
I understand that. I just want to interject. Like, I'll go to the ballots every year or get an absentee ballot, and varying by election, 50% of it may be me not voting, 70% may be me not voting, 90% may be not voting because I don't know the people running. So if it's somebody local and I want to support them, I'll vote for them. But I'm not going to vote for people I don't know. Mm-hmm. So...
And I think doing that really causes some damage, not for the typical reason that people would give that you're giving, legitimacy to a system. They don't need that. They're going to do what they want, like I said before. But the negative effect that comes out of it is you're giving them feedback on their actions and how it's perceived in the general public opinion. And if they get no feedback, they have no idea where you are on how hard they're pushing.
Right. I understand that. David?
Right. And let me, the information that you've given is great. And a couple responses for you that you just now solicited when you solicited for a response. Let's go back to the original debate proposition, which was simply if you don't vote, for all practical intents and purposes, notwithstanding the benefits that Stu cited, if you don't vote, you're not going to have a direct influence if there is one to be had. If you do vote, you may still not have a direct influence, but there's a chance also that you may.
I'm sorry, David, I hate to interrupt, but I just had this flashback of the movie Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance?
Yeah. Okay. And that's just on the very my position on the entirety of our democratic republic is not summed up in one proposition that if you don't vote, you got zero chance of influencing, and if you do vote, you got 0 plus X. That does not sum up my entire position. That's just one, 0.5% of my opinion on the entirety of the situation. But that was what the proposition that I threw in there for debate was that, one simple little small part of the entire question. Over.
I think it's a good thought experiment. I appreciate you bringing it up. I don't think I'm ever going to convince anyone to not vote who wants to vote, and I don't think I'm going to convince Stu to ever vote for anything, even if it's like whether to stop at McDonald's or Wendy's, which is fine. I mean,
I'll vote on things like that.
Just nothing involving politics.
Yeah.
I get that. I think it's like everybody's always drilled into my mind is never tell anybody who you voted for. You've got to keep this secret. It's like, well, no, I don't. I can tell whoever I want. And more to the point, I can decide whether to vote for everything or vote for nothing or just be a constant no vote. Were we talking on the air about me liking to vote because it gives me an opportunity to say no to government spending? Yeah. In New Hampshire, locally, I can vote and say, no, I don't want to buy a new tractor. I don't want to pay for a new roof on this building. It's that granular, so I can do that. But yeah, just the greater philosophy. I understand where you're coming from, David. If you give them any feedback, they may act differently. I think Stu is just under the opinion that you can give them all the feedback you want. They're going to do what they want. Is that fairly accurate?
Only monitor your feedback to see how hard they can push.
Right. Which I like that phrase, by the way. How far will they take it? David, thank you so much for the phone call.
David likes to generate discussion, it sounds like.
And he does, and he always, this one was a good one.
Yeah.
I like David's calls.
I generally do too. I think I've heard enough about his neighbors. It just seems like he's venting when he calls up, and I understand venting too.
Yeah,
I get that.
Yep.
We're going to go to the phones where we've got Ralph. Ralph, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hey, yep, it's Ralph again. Just a big shout out to Press NH Now. He came out with a great YouTube video the other day, exercising his First Amendment right, and that's really all I got to say.
What was he doing?
Yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So he was over. I'm not going to disclose the exact location, but it was a Department of Transportation. It was one of their big facilities for their freight, box trucks, reefers, etc. And yeah, he just really exposed a lot of those guys that just don't know, the true value of your First Amendment.
Interesting. Did he witness any government waste going on, by the way?
No, I appreciate you bringing that up. I just so the only thing I witnessed was, sometimes they leave a lot of those those trucks, especially the reefers, they just have them idling. And of course, it's not really good to do. I mean, who knows how long, if they're on their reset or something like that. So I don't want to call them out for something that's not really happening. But
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I've never accused government of being efficient or of being particularly caring about anybody's rights, other than their right to a paycheck. They seem to believe they have. Ralph, thank you so much for the call.
Yep, thank you. Have a great night.
Take care, man. Bye. Yeah, I would be most surprised by going into any government facility and witnessing them actually doing something good.
Me
Or
too.
efficient.
Or yeah,
efficient.
like Stu said, or efficient, because these people are never efficient.
It would be amazing. 603-283-6160 is our number. Give us a call. This is Free Talk Live.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join today.
From Feature Story News in San Francisco, I'm Ira Spitzer. Officials in the U.S. state of Florida say the time to evacuate has passed as Hurricane Milton begins to make landfall on the state's western coast. The storm has already produced tornadoes across the state that have knocked down power lines and overturned vehicles. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is urging people to shelter in place if they're in the storm's path.
So the storm is here. It's time for everybody to hunker down. I know we've got massive amounts of resources that have been prepared for this storm.
Milton was downgraded to a Category 3 hurricane from a Category 5 storm as it approached land, but it is still considered an extremely dangerous hurricane with wind speeds over 100 miles per hour. More than 300,000 people in Florida are without power, a number that is expected to rise significantly as Milton makes landfall in the area south of the city of Tampa. Earlier in the day, President Biden said the hurricane could be the worst to hit Florida in a century.
Milton still carries incredible destructiveness, can wipe out communities, can cause loss of life. Storm surge is still expected to be up to 13 feet.
Milton's arrival comes just 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene made landfall in Florida, a storm which would ultimately kill more than 200 people. National Hurricane Center Director Michael Brennan shared tips for those who will be impacted by the storm.
So we want to talk about widespread power outages. How do you keep yourself safe? You want to use flashlights and not candles. You want to practice portable generator safety. We lose a lot of people to carbon monoxide poisoning from improper generator use. And you want to be careful with any food and water left in your home without refrigeration. Again, make sure that it's safe to eat.
In other news, more than a dozen U.S. states are filing lawsuits against TikTok because of its effects on teens and other young users. A bipartisan coalition of attorneys general allege the social media giant is addictive and harmful to users' mental health. TikTok says the claims are inaccurate and misleading. FSN's Sally Patterson has more.
Around 6 in 10 US adults under 30 say they use TikTok. The social media app's got more than 150 million users across the country. That's almost half of America's population. But officials in more than 10 US states say it's doing far more harm than good. In fact, one lawsuit accuses TikTok of being, quote, digital nicotine, and says the app is intentionally trying to addict young children to its platform. A TikTok spokesperson denies that allegation, saying the company provides robust safeguards and has voluntarily launched safety features to protect young users. The lawsuits come as TikTok faces increasing scrutiny about its Chinese ownership, with US President Joe Biden saying he'll ban it unless the company's sold by next April.
From Bureaus Worldwide, this is
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. 603-283-6160 is our number. Give us a call.
Moments remain, so get on the air.
Yeah, there's time for a couple calls. Otherwise, we'll read another story and discuss it, which we are oft want to do. But hey, you can bring up anything you want. This one I thought was a pretty catchy headline. Biden-Harris regime quietly amends directive against assassination of Americans. You know, we don't really want super specific instructions on assassinating American citizens.
I'm not assassinating them.
Huh.
Well, we definitely don't want to say you can't assassinate citizens, so we'll make it a little more vague, so maybe something will fall through the cracks and we'll get rid of some pesky U.S. citizens. The Biden-Harris administration amended a Bush-era directive against the assassination of Americans as it pertains to law enforcement activities in intelligence collection and national security. The Defense Department appears to have removed language asserting that, quote, under no circumstances shall any, quote, unquote, component or employee of the federal government, quote, engage in, conspire to engage in assassination. So they just kind of removed the under no circumstances shall any. They removed that part. This clear language appeared in the August 2007 version of the directive, which relates to the implementation of former President Ronald Reagan's Executive Order 12333, originally signed in 1981. On September 27, 2024, the Defense Department established a more vague language stating that no department, quote, civilian employee or member of the armed forces will engage in or conspire to engage in assassination, unquote.
That leaves the door wide open.
Sure does.
It sort of does. The, quote, under no circumstances, unquote, clause is notably missing, prompting many on social media to sound the alarm against the intent behind the change. The amendment was first noted by journalist Ken Klippenstein's page Clip News, and it was shared the news on X. Natalie Winters, a journalist and co-host of Steve Bannon's War Room podcast, also highlighted the change on X. Quote, odd thing to change, especially stripping the under no circumstances, unquote, Winters commented. Conservative news page Amuse reshared the update on its X page, crediting Winter with reporting on the change. Quote, with just months left in office, the Biden-Harris regime decided to update the 17-year-old Bush-era directive against assassination of Americans, unquote. The page, which uses AI and satire to report on news, reported, quote, why would the regime feel the need to legalize killing Americans who threaten the foundations of our democracy, the page added. Headline, USA reached out to the DOD for comment outside of business hours, but did not receive a response by the 1:45 a.m. deadline. The story shall be updated, and if the federal agency provides a response. Yeah, I don't know that they've ever really cared if they kill U.S. citizens or not. I mean, they've covered enough of them up. They were, during Obama's years, they were pretty proud of the fact that they killed the child of a terrorist. Mm-hmm. That was under Obama, correct?
Yep. You're talking about the Adnan Khashoggi thing? Or?
I can't remember the names. But they were drone striking one terrorist. They got him, and then I think later on his son was traveling also overseas, U.S. citizen, and they drone struck.
Were they journalists?
No, this was just the son of. Yeah, they've killed journalists too.
Yeah.
They kind of cover those up.
I'm not familiar with all these drone-stricken individuals, so
yeah,
I can't really comment
and
on
without
this.
being able to pull up the names. It was during Obama's administration. It happened in Africa. One terrorist they had been watching, they hit him with a drone strike, and then a week or two later, his son, who is an American citizen, was traveling there were no allegations against the son. Just he was traveling in the same country, and they hit him with a drone strike too, and that was a big story at the time because he did nothing wrong. He was not being investigated. He was not suspected of being a terrorist. He was just related to a dead guy who they'd already killed, but was just a U.S. citizen, but they didn't have any problem doing that. I had a problem with them doing that, and a lot of people did. But
yeah, it's kind of a problem.
Yeah, shouldn't fire drones at people who you shouldn't, and you shouldn't make the rules of engagement even more unclear by dumbing down the very few restrictions you've placed on military and civilian assets in the quest to do whatever business you think needs to be done. Why would you just say we need to make this more vague? We need to give our people more leeway to assassinate Americans.
I have no idea. It makes no sense to me.
Doesn't make any sense to me other than they may be thinking that something's coming. See, now we're back on Apocalypse Talk Live, and
Indeed.
I didn't mean to do that. Why exactly would that happen? But these types of things happen during every administration. It's not just the Biden-Harris show. I mean,
maybe it's just too expensive to keep framing these things as suicides.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just complicated, and they can just say...
And they never get it right. There's always 2 gunshots to the back of the head and the guy killed himself.
Wrong hand, rolled himself up in a rug, and then dumped his body outside of D.C. Yeah.
Stabbed themselves deeply in the back. Yeah.
These things happen. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is just a way of just saying, everybody knows we did it, so let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, maybe.
They're going to come up with it anyway. We're not fooling anybody.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they got enough feedback from the voters that they decided that this is now acceptable.
Exactly. This is exactly what our callers have been demanding. No, they haven't been demanding that, but...
It was Ceramite.
Ceramite? I don't know. I just I grow weary of our government trying to solve everything with either a war or a proxy war. It's like Biden and Harris sitting there going, we have never brought troops in harm's way, and yes, you have repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
And meanwhile, your hands are not any cleaner on Ukraine or Israel and Gaza just because you're one step back from the battle.
Yeah.
You're supplying, arming both sides. In most cases, they're arming both sides. They're giving money to both sides.
Yeah.
So you're just creating a situation where American companies can profit. Something. What's the word I'm looking? Military industrial complex. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always the good old boys.
Yeah, and they've been at it for 50, 60, 70 years. Oh, no.
Thousands.
No. Well, I know thousands.
This is what the Empire does, man.
I was going to say, I was going to go all Smedley Butler, and that was World War I, right? He was one
I think
who
it
made
was.
a big stink out of it.
Yeah, I think it was
right.
World War I
War's
that
a
he made a
racket.
big stink about, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember reading that.
I think it was specifically, though, the time... Maybe it was the time leading up to World War I. It was between Spanish-American War and World War, I think, because the Empire still needed to expand during that time,
Right.
and so he was all over the world making it what did he call it, a safe place for industry?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we need to... Jingoism came about during that same time, and...
Yeah, we got to have free markets, even if we got to force them open.
Yeah, pretty much.
Even if we got to displace thousands of people. And,
We got to force everyone to have our way of life by bombing them.
And that way we'll bring peace.
Exactly.
That's what we're all about. I don't
War
mean...
is peace.
Yeah. This country, I mean, I do feel it's kind of gone off the deep end over the last 30, 40 years, but the seeds were sown a century before. I mean, with the following
Well,
this,
I'd say the seeds are even sown, after the Civil War.
yeah.
I'd say after independence. I mean,
You're going way back.
I mean, the War of 1812 officially ended in a draw. Look at
Right.
the Wikipedia page says that ended in a draw. So you tell me Americans actually won their independence? I kind of doubt it.
As long as Wikipedia says so.
Well, Wikipedia says no.
Oh, okay. That's right, because nobody's going to fact check Wikipedia.
Yeah. America was not the victor in 1812.
Well, we don't talk about our losses. Here in America, we don't.
I've never lost a war.
I never have either.
I've never entered one.
I've lost battles.
Yeah.
Battles of the wits.
Yep.
Yeah.
Minor power struggles I've lost.
I think, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. But I don't. That's why I guess I have little hope. I mean, we don't learn. By we, I mean, I don't mean we. I mean the federal government. They don't learn because they stay in power and they become more powerful every time they lose, which is crazy. But the American people seem to feel that we should reward bad behavior by giving them more power.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as my guy happens to be in the White House, then I'm okay with giving them more and more power.
Seems to be the trend.
Not thinking that these things are cumulative, and they certainly are. I've had so many people, talk about, the president just has too much power. Too much power resides in the executive branch, and it's like, don't you remember you voted to support all that stuff with your last vote? The last time it was your guy in.
Yeah, this sounded like a great idea then.
Exactly. It does. It's not like these things expire. You've made it bad for generations to come, and look what you got. And this is going to continue. I don't know why people can't understand that simple concept, but it is one that evades evidently everyone. I'm going to go to another story. Oh, yeah, this was kind of news. X evidently is back on in Brazil.
Yep, they are.
Another story from The Guardian. Brazil lifts ban on X after Elon Musk complies with court demands. I didn't hear that part, but we'll see what they say. Social platform was blocked after tech billionaire failed to name local representatives and pay fines. So did Elon name his local representatives, or did he just pay fines? Brazilians are set to regain access to X after a Supreme Court judge lifted a ban introduced nearly 6 weeks ago as a result of Elon Musk's failure to comply with the South American country's laws. X was blocked in Brazil, where it had more than 22 million users at the end of August, in what was the culmination of a months-long arm wrestle between the network's billionaire owner and the Brazilian Supreme Court. The immediate trigger for the ban was Musk's failure to name a local representative and pay millions of dollars worth of fines. But the backdrop was a long-running and politically charged battle between the outspoken tech billionaire and Brazil's top court, which was trying to combat the dissemination of far-right misinformation and anti-democratic content on the social media network. Just as an aside, could we just say left and right? Why does it have to be the far-right misinformation? I
have no idea.
I kind of hold.
I think it's a propaganda tool.
No, it's because they keep moving everything so far left now that anything on the right is far right.
Exactly, and can't we just go back to saying, I want to bring back right and left because we live in a duopoly. It's a disaster. And I want not just the far left or the far right to blame, to take the fall for everything that goes wrong with the system. I want them all to take blame for it. Yeah. Just because you're just a regular run-of-the-mill Republican, and then you're as culpable as people on the far right, quote unquote, and just as culpable as people on the far left and the left. You're perpetuating a failed system that will never yield anything positive.
I think they don't talk about far left now because that's just hard communism.
Yeah, they don't want to talk about the hard left.
There's no more left of American government that isn't just
it's
straight
just
hard
communism, right? Well, that's fine too. I mean, can we just say then crazy conservatives and communists? I think most people do. Well, they don't call them crazy conservatives. What's a good name for the right? Are they? I'm reluctant to use something like conservative.
How about bootlickers?
Bootlickers and communists.
There you go.
Pretty much.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Well, communists can be bootlickers too. They just lick different boots, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's bootlicker versus bootlicker. That's
pretty much.
That's all we have.
Yeah.
Okay, here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
Jack Bootlicker or Hugo Boss Bootlicker.
Yeah.
The immediate trigger for the ban was Musk's failure to name a local representative and pay millions of dollars in fines. But the backdrop was long. I already said that. Experts and Brazilian authorities partly blamed the spread of such incendiary online content for the far-right riots that rocked Brazil in January 2023. Musk, who has aligned himself with far-right figures, including Brazil's former president Bolsonaro, reacted angrily to the August ban. He called one Supreme Court Justice, Alexander de Moraes, a dictator and a Voldemort, and posted a meme of a dog dangling its private parts in the face of another animal as a sign of his revolt. But in recent days, Musk appeared to have backed down, paying 28.6 million reais, it's about $3.9 million in fines, and named a Brazilian lawyer as X's local representative as required by the country's law. Given those steps, Moraes wrote that he ordered the, quote, end of the suspension and authorized the immediate return of X's activity in Brazil, unquote, in a legal decision issued on Tuesday. Moraes ordered Brazil's telecommunications regulator, Anatel, to implement his ruling, although on Tuesday evening, X remained inaccessible without the use of a virtual private network or VPN. The network is expected to become available in the coming hours. I really hope VPNs just become a thing that everybody uses. There's no reason to tell anyone where you happen to be geographically located, and
True.
Lots of reasons not to.
Yeah, VPNs are cool.
The Brazilian commentators and pro-democracy advocates celebrated what they portrayed as X's surrender to the rule of law as a victory for the country's institutions and sovereignty. Quote, the ban wasn't censorship, unquote. Gerson Camarati, a prominent political commentator, told the news channel Globo News, quote, this was about noncompliance with judicial decisions. It's Brazilian democracy that gains with this, unquote. Really? I think if your government tries to shut down speech, you have a problem, and there is no winner called Brazilian democracy.
Right.
Camarati noted how over the past few weeks, life in Brazil had continued as normal, despite the lack of Musk's increasingly unruly network. Several million Brazilian social media users simply relocated to a rival network Blue Sky, that's Jack Dorsey's Twitter-like thing. Quote, the most interesting thing is that Brazil didn't grind to a halt because of the ban on X. Nobody in Brazil died because of the absence of X.
Really? They all made it through okay?
Believe it or not, there were no deaths attributed to the banning. Yeah, this is crazy.
I guess people can live without social media.
I've never made a Twitter account. I've never been on X either.
Yeah, I've had a Twitter account since the aughts, and
I think I've had the same account since 2009. So
yeah, mine's right around there too. I mean, just for the longest time, I just never saw the point in it.
I don't think I even made a Facebook page until like 2011.
Wow.
Yeah, I was Facebooking back in the aughts too, but then it was kind of new and interesting and not annoying and boring like it is now.
Yeah, I don't go on there anymore.
In a statement, the social media activism organization Sleeping Giants also voiced support for what it calls, quote, a significant victory for Brazilian democracy, our political institutions, and the sovereignty of our state. Like you just literally shut stuff down for reasons of you didn't like what was being said. And all these people are just talking about how this is a great day that Elon Musk paid $3.7 million, which is literally pocket change to Elon Musk, and appointed a lawyer. That's it.
That'd be about like me having to pay $37.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Elon Musk does have a habit of, talking tough to the bureaucrats at government, but eventually paying up. So I'm not surprised.
This is true. Yeah. And it's a very big market for X. I get that, and I don't fault him for it. I'm kind of enjoying the fact that he is kind of thumbing his nose at a lot of bureaucrats. And
he's entertaining, isn't he?
There is an entertainment level there.
Definitely is a lot of
yes.
entertainment there.
I don't think he's going to change the world. Maybe he'll change Mars. That will be good if he does that.
I'm really hoping that they come out and reveal that he's an AI someday. That'd
be hilarious.
He was the first successful android, and he's been just walking around, and they kept the secret for years.
That'd be hilarious.
It would.
We've all been trolled.
I don't know. I'm ready to blow this popsicle stand. I think Mars.
Mars might be okay.
Well, it would be, except for living in a bubble. I don't think I could do really well living in bubbles or cages or caves.
Yeah, me neither. And just communicating, if I had family here on Earth, that'd be really hard to communicate with them.
Well, that's the part I look forward to because, a radio signal takes about 18 minutes. So you could blast them, you could tell them exactly how they felt and it would be 36 minutes before you ever got a response. And
yeah,
it would have to develop, you'd have to develop a new method of long distance arguing.
Oh, I'm sure that Elon will solve it. He'll just Starlink it all the way from Mars to Earth and instantaneous communications.
Little superluminal communications. Yeah, he could probably do that. Actually, we could do that. But that's all the time we have for tonight. Give us a call. We'll be back on next week, and we look forward to hearing from you. This is Free Talk Live. Peace.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by that treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way